Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Veil. I'm here to help you drift off into a peaceful sleep, offering soothing stories and gentle guidance. Before we settle into dreamland, let me know in the comments, which country are you from? And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more restful nights. Estes Park, Colorado. The name conjures images of breathtaking mountain vistas, crisp alpine air, and a charming, historic town nestled at the eastern entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. That it's a place where nature's beauty reigns supreme, attracting outdoor enthusiasts, families seeking adventure, and those simply looking to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. But beyond its scenic splendor, Estes Park harbors a secret, a whispered legend that clings to one particular landmark like morning mist to a mountain peak. The Stanley Hotel, rising majestically above the town. The Stanley Hotel is a beacon of elegance and old-world charm, its gleaming white facade, punctuated by grand windows and stately columns, speaks of a bygone era of luxury and sophistication. Founded in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, inventor of the Stanley steamer automobile, the hotel was envisioned as a grand resort for the wealthy elite, a place where they could escape the summer heat and indulge in the natural beauty of the Rockies. And for many years, it lived up to that promise. Guests arrived in style, traversing winding mountain roads in their own Stanley steamers, eager to experience the hotel's opulent amenities and unparalleled views. The Stanley Hotel quickly became a social hub, hosting lavish parties, attracting prominent figures, and cementing its place in Colorado's history. Its reputation was one of glamour and prestige, a place where dreams were made and memories were forged against. The backdrop of the majestic Rocky Mountains, the meticulously manicured lawns, the hushed elegance of the lobby, the promise of impeccable service, all contributed to the hotel's initial allure. But beneath the surface of this idyllic picture lies a darker narrative, a chilling undercurrent that has transformed the Stanley Hotel from a mere historical landmark into a world-renowned destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. For within its walls, whispers of unexplained phenomena abound. Guests report strange occurrences, disembodied voices echoing in empty hallways, objects moving inexplicably, cold spots that send shivers down the spine. And at the heart of these tales lies one particular room, Room 217, a space inextricably linked to the hotel's haunted history and the tragic story of a long-forgotten housekeeper. The allure of the Stanley Hotel is now a complex tapestry woven with threads of beauty and dread. The stunning architecture and breathtaking scenery remain, but they are now intertwined with a reputation for paranormal activity that draws visitors from across the globe. People come seeking a glimpse into the unknown, hoping to experience firsthand the eerie events that have made Room 217 a legend. They come to test the boundaries of reality, to confront the possibility of life beyond death, and to perhaps catch a glimpse of the spectral figure said to roam the halls. The ghost of Mrs. Wilson, forever bound to the room where her life took a tragic turn. The contrast is stark, a place of refined elegance now equally known for its resident spirits. This juxtaposition is what makes the Stanley Hotel so fascinating and compelling, a place where the past refuses to stay silent, and where the veil between worlds seems thin indeed. To truly understand the mystique surrounding the Stanley Hotel, one must delve into the story of its founder, Freeland Oscar Stanley, a man whose ingenuity and ambition shaped not only the hotel itself but also the very landscape of Estes Park. F.O. Stanley, as he was commonly known, was a visionary entrepreneur, best known for co-inventing the Stanley steamer, a revolutionary automobile that gained immense popularity in the early 20th century. However, it was a health scare that ultimately led him to the majestic mountains of Colorado and sparked the idea for his grand hotel. Diagnosed with tuberculosis, Stanley was advised by doctors to seek a drier climate. That he arrived in Estes Park in 1903, seeking respite and a cure for his ailing health. The crisp, clean mountain air and the stunning natural beauty of the area had a profound effect on him. Stanley's health improved dramatically, and he quickly fell in love with the region. That he recognized the potential of Estes Park as a premier resort destination. but he also saw a need for a world-class hotel that could cater to the discerning tastes of the wealthy elite. Fueled by his entrepreneurial spirit and his newfound appreciation for Estes Park, Stanley embarked on his ambitious project, the construction of the Stanley Hotel. That he envisioned a grand, luxurious hotel that would rival the finest resorts in Europe, a place where the wealthy could escape the summer heat and indulge in the unparalleled beauty of the Rocky Mountains. Construction began in 1907, and Stanley spared no expense in bringing his vision to life. He hired skilled craftsmen, imported the finest materials, and oversaw every detail of the project with meticulous care. The hotel was designed in the Georgian style, with a gleaming white facade, grand windows, and stately columns that exuded elegance and sophistication. The Stanley Hotel officially opened its doors in 1909, and it quickly became a sensation. The hotel's opulent amenities, including electric lighting, steam heat, and private bathrooms, were considered cutting-edge for the time. Guests arrived in style, often in their own Stanley steamers, eager to experience the hotel's luxurious accommodations and breathtaking views. The Stanley Hotel quickly attracted a wealthy and influential clientele, including members of high society, prominent politicians, and renowned artists. It became a hub of social activity, hosting lavish parties, elegant balls, and exclusive gatherings. The hotel's reputation for glamour and prestige spread far and wide, cementing its place as one of the premier resorts in the American West. The early years of the Stanley Hotel were marked by prosperity and success. Stanley's vision had been realized, and the hotel had become a symbol of luxury and sophistication in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It was a place where dreams were made, memories were forged, and the elite came to escape and indulge in the beauty of nature. However, even in those early days, whispers of unusual occurrences began to circulate, subtle hints that the Stanley Hotel might be more than just a luxurious resort. These early anecdotes, often dismissed as mere rumors, would eventually evolve into the legends that define the hotel's haunted reputation today. The stage was set, not just for a grand hotel, but for a place where the veil between worlds seemed particularly thin, a place where the past refused to stay silent. The whispers of unusual occurrences that began to circulate in the Stanley Hotel's early years would eventually coalesce around a single tragic event, the accident involving Mrs. Wilson in room 217. While the exact details surrounding the incident remain shrouded in uncertainty and conflicting accounts, the story of Mrs. Wilson is central to the hotel's haunted lore. Mrs. Wilson, sometimes referred to as Elizabeth Wilson in certain accounts, was a head housekeeper at the Stanley Hotel. Her role was crucial in maintaining the hotel's pristine condition and ensuring the comfort of its esteemed guests. She was, by all accounts, a dedicated and hardworking employee, respected by her colleagues and valued for her commitment to the hotel. The year was 1911, and the Stanley Hotel was still relatively new, its reputation for luxury and elegance firmly established. Room 217, like the other guest rooms, was meticulously maintained, a haven of comfort and sophistication for the hotel's discerning clientele. However, on one fateful evening, tragedy struck. The most widely accepted version of the story involves a gas leak. In those early days of the hotel, gas lighting was still common, and room 217 was equipped with gas lamps to provide illumination. It is believed that a leak developed in the gas line connected to one of the lamps. Mrs. Wilson, while tending to her duties in the room, entered and, unaware of the accumulating gas, lit a match or turned on a light switch. The result was a devastating explosion. The room was instantly engulfed in flames, and Mrs. Wilson was caught in the blast. The force of the explosion caused significant damage to the room, and Mrs. Wilson suffered severe injuries. Accounts vary as to the extent of her injuries and whether she died immediately or succumbed to her wounds later. Some versions claim she was critically burned but survived for a short time before passing away. Other accounts suggest she was severely injured but ultimately recovered, though perhaps never fully. The ambiguity surrounding Mrs. Wilson's fate only adds to the mystery of room 217. The lack of definitive historical Records and the passage of time have blurred the lines between fact and speculation. What is certain is that a tragic accident occurred in room 217, and Mrs. Wilson was at the center of it. The hotel staff and management at the time were undoubtedly shaken by the incident. The Stanley Hotel prided itself on its safety and impeccable service, and the accident in room 217 was a stark reminder of the potential for unforeseen tragedy. The room was quickly closed off for repairs, and the hotel attempted to move forward, but the memory of Mrs. Wilson and the events of that fateful evening lingered. Whether she died in the explosion shortly after, or survived with lasting injuries, Mrs. Wilson's name became inextricably linked to room 217. It is her story, her tragic fate, that forms the foundation of the room's haunted reputation, the reason why guests today report experiencing unexplained phenomena within its walls. The legacy of Mrs. Wilson is a potent reminder that even in the most opulent and luxurious settings, tragedy can strike, leaving behind echoes that reverberate through time. Following the devastating accident involving Mrs. Wilson, room 217 was immediately closed off, becoming a scene of intense activity as the hotel staff and contractors worked diligently to repair the damage. The explosion had undoubtedly left its mark, requiring extensive reconstruction to restore the room to its former state of elegance. The priority was to erase any visible reminders of the tragedy, to ensure that future guests would not be reminded of the unfortunate events that had transpired within those walls. The repairs were undertaken with meticulous care. Damaged walls were rebuilt, new furnishings were installed, and the gas lamps, the likely source of the explosion, were replaced with updated lighting fixtures. The goal was to make room 217 indistinguishable from the other guest rooms in the hotel, to seamlessly blend it back into the overall fabric of the Stanley Hotel. Once the repairs were completed, room 217 was reopened to guests. It was presented as just another room in the hotel, a comfortable and well-appointed space offering the same amenities and level of service as the rest of the accommodations. There was no mention of the accident, no visible signs of the tragedy that had occurred there. The hotel management, understandably, sought to downplay the incident, hoping to preserve the Stanley Hotel's reputation for luxury and safety, and for a time, it seemed as though they had succeeded. Guests checked into room 217, unaware of its history, enjoying their stay without incident. The room became just another space within the hotel, a place to rest and relax after a day of exploring the stunning scenery of Estes Park. The memory of Mrs. Wilson and the explosion began to fade into the background, becoming a forgotten chapter in the Stanley Hotel's long and storied history. However, despite the hotel's efforts to erase the past, something lingered in room 217. Perhaps it was the residual energy of the tragic event, or perhaps it was the lingering presence of Mrs. Wilson herself. Whatever the reason, strange occurrences began to be reported by guests staying in the room. These early reports were often subtle and easily dismissed: a flickering light, a cold spot in the corner, a feeling of unease. But as time went on, the reports became more frequent and more pronounced. Guests began to describe hearing unexplained noises, seeing objects move on their own, and experiencing the unsettling sensation of being watched. Room 217, despite its outward appearance of normalcy, was slowly transforming into something more than just a guest room. It was becoming a focal point for paranormal activity, a place where the veil between worlds seemed particularly thin. The hotel's attempt to erase the past had inadvertently created something far more compelling and far more enduring, a haunted room that would capture the imagination of the world. The very act of trying to make it just another room seemed to amplify whatever forces were at play, turning room 217 into a legend in the making. Pinpointing the exact moment when the first reports of paranormal activity in room 217 surfaced is a challenge lost as it is to the mists of time and the unreliability of anecdotal evidence. Before the Stanley Hotel achieved widespread fame as a haunted destination, tales of strange happenings in room 217 were often confined to hushed conversations among hotel staff and occasional entries in guest registers, easily dismissed as overactive imaginations or the product of late-night revelry. These early accounts, predating Stephen King's stay and the subsequent explosion of interest in the paranormal, are particularly intriguing because they offer a glimpse into the room's haunted reputation before it was amplified by popular culture. Unfortunately, specific names and detailed accounts from this era are scarce, making it difficult to verify the authenticity of these early claims. However, piecing together fragments of information from various sources, a picture begins to emerge of the types of experiences that were being reported in room 217 during the decades following Mrs. Wilson's accident. 1. Of the most common reports involved flickering lights. Guests would describe the lights in the room inexplicably dimming or brightening, even when the electrical system was functioning perfectly. This phenomenon, often attributed to Mrs. Wilson's lingering presence, became a recurring theme in the room's haunted narrative. Another frequently reported experience was the sensation of cold spots. Guests would describe feeling a sudden drop in temperature in certain areas of the room, particularly near the bed or in the corners. These cold spots, often accompanied by a feeling of unease, were interpreted as evidence of a ghostly presence, a sign that something otherworldly was sharing the space. Unexplained noises were also a common occurrence. Guests reported hearing disembodied footsteps in the hallway outside room 217, even when no one was there. Others described hearing muffled voices or the faint sound of someone humming, adding to the room's eerie atmosphere. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involved the feeling of being watched or touched. Some guests described feeling as though they were being observed, even when they were alone in the room. Others reported feeling a gentle tug on the covers or the sensation of someone sitting on the edge of the bed, leading them to believe that they were sharing the room with an unseen entity. While these early accounts may lack the sensationalism of more recent reports, they are significant because they establish a pattern of paranormal activity in room 217 long before it became a tourist attraction. These experiences, whispered among hotel staff and shared in hushed tones by guests, laid the foundation for the room's haunted reputation, setting the stage for the events that would later capture the world's attention. The story spread organically, by word of mouth, building a reputation based on genuine experiences, untainted by the influence of popular fiction or commercial exploitation. These were the seeds of the legend, planted long before The Shining cast its long shadow over the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel's trajectory shifted dramatically in 1974, forever altering its place in popular culture and cementing its reputation as a haunted landmark. It was during this year that Stephen King, the master of horror, checked into room 217, an experience that would profoundly impact his life and inspire him to write one of the most iconic horror novels of all time, The Shining. King and his wife, Tabitha, were on a short trip, seeking a change of scenery and a break from their daily routine. They chose the Stanley Hotel, drawn to its remote location and its reputation for old-world charm. It was late in the season, and the hotel was nearing its winter closure, leaving King and his wife as virtually the only guests. The emptiness of the hotel, with its vast hallways and echoing silence, immediately created an unsettling atmosphere. As King recounted in numerous interviews, the experience was profoundly unsettling from the start. The sheer size of the hotel, combined with its near-deserted state, created a sense of isolation and vulnerability. He and Tabitha were assigned to room 217, unaware of its history or the stories of paranormal activity that swirled around it. During their stay, King experienced a series of strange and unsettling events. He reported hearing unexplained noises, seeing shadows moving in the periphery of his vision, and feeling a general sense of unease. One particularly vivid experience involved a dream in which his son, Owen, was being chased through the hotel's corridors by a malevolent force. He awoke in a cold sweat, his heart pounding, convinced that something truly sinister was present in the hotel. While King himself never explicitly stated that he encountered a ghost or witnessed a specific paranormal event in room 217, the overall atmosphere of the hotel and the unsettling experiences he had during his stay clearly had a profound impact on him. The isolation, the vastness of the building, and the lingering sense of unease all contributed to a growing feeling of dread that would eventually find its way into the pages of The Shining. The real-life events that resonated with King and were later incorporated into his novel included the hotel's remote location, its seasonal closure, and its imposing size, the feeling of isolation and vulnerability that King experienced as one of the only guests in the hotel became a central theme in The Shining, where the Torrance family is trapped in the Overlook Hotel during the winter months. The hotel's vast hallways and echoing silence also played a significant role in King's inspiration. The maze-like corridors of the Stanley Hotel became the basis for the Overlook Hotel's labyrinthine layout, a place where the characters could easily become lost and disoriented. While The Shining is a work of fiction, it is deeply rooted in King's personal experiences at the Stanley Hotel. The novel captures the essence of the hotel's eerie atmosphere and explores the themes of isolation, madness, and the supernatural in a way that continues to captivate readers to this day. Stephen King's stay in room 217 wasn't just a vacation, it was an unwitting descent into the heart of a story that would redefine the horror genre and forever change the perception of the Stanley Hotel. The publication of The Shining in 1977 and the subsequent release of Stanley Kubrick's film adaptation in 1980 unleashed a phenomenon that would forever alter the Stanley Hotel's destiny. The book and film, though differing in some respects, both captured the public's imagination with their chilling portrayal of a haunted hotel and the descent into madness of its caretaker. This cultural impact, often referred to as the Shining effect, catapulted the Stanley Hotel into the spotlight, transforming it from a relatively obscure historical landmark into a world-renowned destination for ghost hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and horror fans alike. The book's success created an immediate buzz around the Stanley Hotel. Readers, captivated by King's terrifying tale, were eager to visit the real-life inspiration for the Overlook Hotel. They flocked to Estes Park, hoping to experience firsthand the eerie atmosphere that had fueled King's imagination. The hotel, initially hesitant to embrace its newfound notoriety, soon realized the immense potential for tourism and began to capitalize on its connection to The Shining. However, it was Kubrick's film adaptation that truly solidified the Stanley Hotel's place in popular culture. Although the movie was not actually filmed at the Stanley Hotel, the Timberline Lodge in Oregon served as the exterior location. The film's visual impact and its enduring legacy created an indelible association between the Stanley Hotel and the Overlook Hotel. The image of the vast, snowbound hotel, the unsettling twins in the hallway, and Jack Nicholson's chilling performance as Jack Torrance became ingrained in the collective consciousness, forever linking the Stanley Hotel to the world of horror. The Shining effect had a profound impact on the Stanley Hotel's tourism industry. The hotel began offering ghost tours, highlighting the areas where paranormal activity had been reported and sharing the stories of Mrs. Wilson and other alleged hauntings. Room 217, once just another guest room, became the most sought-after accommodation in the hotel, with guests booking months in advance for the chance to spend a night in the infamous room. The hotel also embraced its connection to The Shining through themed events and promotions that hosted screenings of the film, offered Shining-inspired cocktails at its bar, and even created a hedge maze similar to the one featured in the movie. These initiatives attracted a new type of visitor to the Stanley Hotel, the paranormal tourist. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators began to descend on the hotel, eager to explore its haunted reputation and to conduct their own investigations into the alleged paranormal activity. They brought with them their equipment, their expertise, and their unwavering belief in the existence of ghosts, further amplifying the hotel's reputation as a paranormal hotspot. The Shining effect not only increased the Stanley Hotel's popularity but also transformed its identity. It became more than just a luxurious resort or a historical landmark. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of horror, and a destination for those seeking a glimpse into the unknown. The hotel's past, its architecture, and its connection to Mrs. Wilson were all viewed through the lens of The Shining, forever shaping its image and its appeal. Today, the Stanley Hotel continues to be a magnet for those seeking a brush with the paranormal, And room 217 remains at the epicenter of these accounts. Modern-day reports of paranormal activity in the infamous room echo the experiences of guests from decades past, while also adding new layers to the room's already rich tapestry of haunted lore. Invisible footsteps remain a common complaint. Guests describe hearing distinct footsteps pacing the floor above, even when the room above is unoccupied. Others report hearing footsteps inside room 217 itself, as if someone is walking around the room unseen. This phenomenon is often attributed to Mrs. Wilson, forever tending to her duties as a housekeeper. Flickering lights continue to plague the room, defying logical explanation. Guests report the lights dimming and brightening inexplicably, often in response to their own thoughts or actions. Some have even claimed that the lights flicker in Morse code, attempting to communicate a message from beyond. Objects moving on their own are another frequently reported occurrence. Guests have described items on the dresser or nightstand shifting positions, drawers opening and closing by themselves, and even objects flying across the room. These poltergeist-like activities are often interpreted as evidence of a mischievous spirit, perhaps Mrs. Wilson expressing her displeasure or boredom. The feeling of being touched remains a chillingly consistent experience. Guests have reported feeling a gentle tug on the covers, a cold hand brushing against their skin, or the sensation of someone sitting on the edge of the bed. These tactile encounters are often the most unsettling, leaving guests feeling violated and vulnerable, while less common. Some guests have even reported seeing apparitions in room 217. These apparitions typically take the form of a woman in a housekeeper's uniform, believed to be Mrs. Wilson herself. Some describe her as a benevolent presence, watching over them and ensuring their comfort, while others perceive her as a more malevolent figure, radiating a sense of sadness or anger. One recent guest, Sarah, recounted her experience. "I went to bed, and I felt like someone was tucking me in. That I was alone in the room. I felt the covers being pulled up. It was very gentle, but it was definitely there." Another guest, Mark, shared a different experience. "I woke up in the middle of the night, and I saw a figure standing at the foot of the bed. It looked like a woman in an old-fashioned dress. She just stood there for a few seconds, then faded away. I was terrified." Even hotel staff have reported experiencing paranormal activity in room 217. A housekeeper, Maria, shared her story. "I was cleaning the room one day, and I heard a child giggling. I looked around, but there was no one there. Then, I felt a cold breeze, and the door slammed shut. I ran out of the room and didn't go back in there for a week." These modern-day accounts, collected from guests and staff alike, paint a compelling picture of a room that is far from ordinary. They suggest that room 217 is more than just a historical landmark. It is a place where the past and present collide, where the veil between worlds is thin, and where the spirit of Mrs. Wilson continues to make her presence known. The consistency of these reports, spanning decades and across diverse individuals, adds weight to the claims that room 217 is indeed haunted. The enduring reports of paranormal activity in room 217 have attracted the attention of countless paranormal investigators, each eager to explore the room's haunted reputation and to gather evidence of the supernatural. These investigators employ a variety of methods and tools, ranging from traditional techniques to cutting-edge technology, in their quest to unravel the mysteries of room 217. One of the most common techniques used by paranormal investigators is electronic voice phenomenon. EVP, recording. EVP involves recording audio in a supposedly haunted location, often during periods of silence, and then analyzing the recording for unexplained voices or sounds that were not audible at the time of the recording. Investigators often ask questions aloud, hoping to elicit a response from any spirits that may be present in room 217. EVP recordings have reportedly captured faint whispers, disembodied voices, and other unexplained sounds, which some interpret as evidence of communication from Mrs. Wilson or other entities. Another popular tool used by paranormal investigators is the electromagnetic field (EMF) meter. EMF meters measure fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, which some believe can be an indicator of paranormal activity. The theory is that spirits or other entities may generate or manipulate electromagnetic fields in their environment. In room 217, investigators have reported spikes in EMF readings in certain areas of the room, particularly near the bed and in the corners, suggesting a potential source of paranormal energy. Thermal imaging cameras are also used to detect cold spots or temperature anomalies. These cameras can visualize heat signatures, allowing investigators to identify areas where the temperature is significantly lower than the surrounding environment. Cold spots are often associated with paranormal activity, as some believe that spirits draw energy from their surroundings, causing a localized drop in temperature. Some investigators also employ dowsing rods, which are L-shaped metal rods that are believed to respond to paranormal energy. Dowsing rods are held loosely in the hands, and investigators observe whether the rods cross or move in a particular direction, which is interpreted as an indication of the presence of spirits or other entities. More advanced techniques include the use of specialized sensors that can detect changes in air pressure, humidity, and other environmental factors. These sensors can help investigators identify patterns or anomalies that may be associated with paranormal activity. Some investigators also use video cameras with infrared capabilities to capture footage in low-light conditions, hoping to document any visual evidence of ghosts or other apparitions. The findings of these paranormal investigations in room 217 have been mixed. Some investigators have reported compelling evidence of paranormal activity, including clear EVP recordings, significant EMF fluctuations, and visual anomalies. Others have found little or no evidence to support the claims of haunting. Point 1. Well-known paranormal investigator, Dr. Emily Carter, spent several nights in room 217 and reported capturing numerous EVP recordings, including what she believes to be the voice of Mrs. Wilson. We asked questions about her life and her accident, Dr. Carter explained, and we received several responses that seemed to be directly related to our questions. However, other investigators have been more skeptical. Mark Olson, a seasoned paranormal investigator, spent a week in room 217 and found no conclusive evidence of paranormal activity. We recorded some unexplained noises, Olson admitted, but we were unable to rule out natural causes. Despite the mixed results, the continued interest of paranormal investigators in room 217 underscores the enduring appeal of the room's haunted reputation. Whether or not definitive proof of paranormal activity is ever found, the mystery of room 217 continues to captivate the imagination of those who seek to understand the unknown. While the anecdotal evidence and paranormal investigations surrounding room 217 paint a compelling picture of a haunted space, it is crucial to consider alternative explanations for the alleged phenomena. Skeptics offer various perspectives that challenge the supernatural interpretations, attributing the reported experiences to psychological factors, environmental conditions, suggestibility, and the power of suggestion. Psychological factors play a significant role in how individuals perceive and interpret their environment. The Stanley Hotel, with its historical significance and its reputation for paranormal activity, can create a heightened state of anticipation and anxiety in guests, making them more susceptible to suggestion and misinterpretation. The mere knowledge that a room is believed to be haunted can prime individuals to expect strange occurrences, leading them to selectively attend to ambiguous stimuli and interpret them as evidence of the supernatural. Environmental conditions can also contribute to the perception of paranormal activity. Old buildings, like the Stanley Hotel, are often prone to creaking noises, drafts, and temperature fluctuations due to their age and construction. These natural occurrences can be easily mistaken for footsteps, cold spots, or other unexplained phenomena. Similarly, faulty wiring or plumbing can cause flickering lights and other electrical disturbances, which can be misinterpreted as paranormal activity. Suggestibility and the power of suggestion are particularly relevant in the context of room 217. The room's haunted reputation, amplified by The Shining and countless ghost stories, creates a strong expectation of paranormal activity. this expectation can influence guests' perceptions and interpretations, leading them to attribute ordinary events to supernatural causes. The power of suggestion can be so strong that it can even induce physical sensations, such as the feeling of being touched or watched. Skeptics also point to the phenomenon of pareidolia, which is the tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random or ambiguous stimuli. For example, a guest might interpret a shadow on the wall as the apparition of Mrs. Wilson, even though it is simply a trick of the light. Pareidolia can explain why different people report seeing different apparitions or hearing different voices in the same location. Furthermore, the unreliability of eyewitness testimony is a crucial consideration. Human memory is fallible and subject to distortion, particularly when influenced by emotions or expectations. Guests who are already predisposed to believe in ghosts may be more likely to misremember or exaggerate their experiences in room 217. Dr. Jennifer Evans, a psychologist specializing in perception and cognition, explains, "Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of the world around us, and they often fill in the gaps with assumptions and expectations that in a place like room 217, where there's a strong cultural narrative about haunting, people are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as evidence of the paranormal." It's also worth noting that confirmation bias can play a role. People who believe in ghosts are more likely to seek out and remember information that confirms their beliefs, while dismissing or downplaying information that contradicts them. This can lead to a distorted perception of the evidence and a reinforcement of the belief in the haunting of room 217. By considering these alternative explanations, it becomes clear that the alleged hauntings of room 217 may not be as straightforward as they seem. While the anecdotal evidence and paranormal investigations are intriguing, they should be interpreted with caution, taking into account the potential influence of psychological factors, environmental conditions, suggestibility, and the power of suggestion. Assuming, for the sake of argument, that the paranormal phenomena in room 217 are not solely attributable to psychological or environmental factors, the question remains: why might Mrs. Wilson's spirit linger there? Various theories attempt to explain her continued presence, ranging from the notion of unfinished business to a strong attachment to the hotel or the concept of residual energy. The unfinished business theory suggests that Mrs. Wilson's spirit remains in room 217 because she has some unresolved task or issue that prevents her from moving on. This could be related to the circumstances of her death, a sense of responsibility for the hotel, or a desire to protect or communicate with someone. Perhaps she feels a need to ensure the safety of other housekeepers, to warn them of potential dangers, or to seek justice for the accident that claimed her life, or significantly altered it. The details surrounding her death, or survival after the accident, are vague and conflicting. Perhaps she lingers seeking a true accounting of what happened. Another theory posits that Mrs. Wilson had a strong attachment to the Stanley Hotel during her lifetime. As a head housekeeper, she would have dedicated a significant portion of her time and energy to maintaining the hotel and ensuring the comfort of its guests. This sense of responsibility and connection could have created a strong emotional bond that persists even after death. Perhaps she sees the hotel as her home, a place where she feels comfortable and secure, and is unwilling to leave. She might still feel a sense of duty to care for the rooms and ensure guests are comfortable, leading to reports of her tucking in guests or adjusting the linens. A third explanation revolves around the concept of residual energy. This theory suggests that traumatic events can leave an imprint on a location, creating a kind of energetic echo that replays itself over and over again. The explosion in room 217, with its intense emotional and physical energy, could have created a residual haunting, causing the events of that night to repeat themselves in a loop. This would explain the reports of flickering lights, unexplained noises, and other phenomena that seem to be directly related to the accident. It is less about Mrs. Wilson's conscious spirit and more about an echo of the past. Some paranormal investigators propose a combination of these theories. Perhaps Mrs. Wilson's spirit is drawn to room 217 because of both her attachment to the hotel and the residual energy of the explosion, her emotional bond to the space. combined with the energetic imprint of the traumatic event, could create a potent paranormal nexus. That it's also possible that Mrs. Wilson is unaware of her own death. Disoriented after the accident, she may continue to perform her duties as a housekeeper, unaware that she is no longer alive. This would explain the seemingly mundane and repetitive nature of some of the reported paranormal activity, such as the sound of footsteps or the feeling of being tucked in. Ultimately, the reason for Mrs. Wilson's alleged lingering presence in room 217 remains a mystery, whether it is unfinished business, a strong attachment to the hotel, residual energy, or a combination of factors. Her story continues to fascinate and intrigue those who seek to understand the mysteries of the afterlife. The lack of definitive answers only adds to the allure, allowing for endless speculation and interpretation. Perhaps the true answer is a complex interplay of all these factors, creating a unique and enduring haunting that defies simple explanation. Initially hesitant to embrace its haunted reputation, the Stanley Hotel eventually recognized the immense potential for tourism and has since wholeheartedly capitalized on its paranormal appeal through a variety of ghost tours, themed events, and strategic marketing initiatives. This calculated embrace has transformed the hotel into a unique destination, attracting a diverse clientele ranging from curious tourists to seasoned paranormal investigators. One of the most popular attractions at the Stanley Hotel is its range of ghost tours. These tours, led by knowledgeable guides, take guests on a journey through the hotel's most haunted locations, sharing stories of Mrs. Wilson, other alleged spirits, and the various paranormal phenomena that have been reported over the years. The tours often incorporate historical facts, anecdotal evidence, and even demonstrations of paranormal investigation techniques, providing a comprehensive and engaging experience for those seeking a glimpse into the unknown. The Stanley Night Ghost Tour is a particularly popular option, offering a nighttime exploration of the hotel's most active areas, armed with EMF meters and other ghost hunting equipment. Guests are encouraged to participate in their own investigations, attempting to communicate with spirits and document any paranormal activity. The guides skillfully weave together historical accounts with chilling tales, creating an immersive and unforgettable experience. Beyond ghost tours, the Stanley Hotel also hosts a variety of themed events throughout the year, capitalizing on its connection to The Shining and its overall reputation for the paranormal. The annual Stanley Film Festival is a prime example, attracting horror filmmakers and fans from around the world. The festival features screenings of classic and contemporary horror films, panel discussions, and other events that celebrate the genre. The hotel also offers murder mystery weekends, where guests can participate in interactive theatrical productions, solving fictional crimes while exploring the hotel's historic spaces. These events blend entertainment with a touch of the macabre, creating a unique and engaging experience for those seeking a thrilling getaway. The Stanley Hotel's marketing strategies also reflect its embrace of its haunted reputation. The hotel's website prominently features its ghost tours and paranormal activities, and its social media channels are filled with stories of alleged hauntings and photos of eerie phenomena. The hotel's marketing materials often emphasize its connection to The Shining, using imagery and language that evoke the film's chilling atmosphere. Room 217, of course, is at the center of the hotel's marketing efforts. The room is heavily promoted as the most haunted location in the hotel, and guests are encouraged to book a stay for a chance to experience the paranormal firsthand. The hotel even offers a Room 217 package, which includes a stay in the infamous room, a ghost tour, and other spooky amenities. This strategic embrace of its haunted reputation has proven to be a highly successful business model for the Stanley Hotel. The hotel attracts a steady stream of visitors throughout the year, drawn by its unique blend of history, luxury, and the paranormal. The ghost tours, themed events, and marketing initiatives generate significant revenue, allowing the hotel to invest in its preservation and to continue to enhance its appeal as a paranormal destination. However, the Stanley Hotel's embrace of its haunted reputation is not without its critics. Some argue that the hotel is exploiting the tragedy of Mrs. Wilson. and sensationalizing the paranormal for commercial gain. Others worry that the focus on the supernatural detracts from the hotel's historical significance and its architectural beauty. Despite these criticisms, the Stanley Hotel remains a popular and successful destination, demonstrating the enduring appeal of the paranormal and the power of effective marketing. Today, Room 217 stands as more than just a guest room. It's a destination in itself, a pilgrimage site for those seeking a paranormal experience and a tangible connection to the legends of the Stanley Hotel. The room is meticulously maintained, blending its historic charm with modern comforts, creating a unique atmosphere that appeals to both ghost hunters and casual tourists. The room's decor reflects its history and its haunted reputation, while it has been renovated over the years to meet modern standards. Efforts have been made to preserve its original character, antique furnishings, period-appropriate wallpaper, and vintage photographs adorn the space, evoking the atmosphere of the early 20th century, when Mrs. Wilson worked at the hotel. Subtle nods to The Shining can also be found, such as a framed poster of the film and a copy of the book placed on the nightstand. Room 217 is incredibly popular, often booked months, if not years, in advance. Guests from all over the world clamor for the opportunity to spend a night in the infamous room, hoping to encounter Mrs. Wilson or experience some other form of paranormal activity. The hotel charges a premium for the room, reflecting its unique appeal and high demand. Given the room's haunted reputation and the potential for overly enthusiastic ghost hunters, the Stanley Hotel has implemented certain guidelines for those staying in Room 217. These guidelines are designed to ensure the safety of guests, protect the room's historical artifacts, and maintain a respectful environment for all. One of the primary guidelines is a prohibition on the use of Ouija boards or other tools for summoning spirits. The hotel wants to avoid encouraging negative or disruptive paranormal activity and to maintain a sense of decorum. Guests are also asked to refrain from conducting seances or other rituals in the room. Another guideline restricts the use of recording equipment. While guests are welcome to take photos and videos for personal use, they are not allowed to conduct professional-grade paranormal investigations or to broadcast live from the room without prior permission from the hotel management. This is to prevent the room from becoming a circus and to protect the privacy of other guests. The hotel also emphasizes the importance of respecting the room's historical artifacts and furnishings. Guests are asked not to move or damage any of the items in the room and to treat the space with reverence. The hotel staff regularly inspects the room to ensure that it is being properly cared for. Perhaps the most important guideline is a reminder that the Stanley Hotel is a place of rest and relaxation. Even for those seeking a paranormal experience, guests are asked to be mindful of other guests and to avoid creating excessive noise or disturbances. The hotel wants to ensure that everyone has a comfortable and enjoyable stay, regardless of their reasons for visiting. Despite these guidelines, the Stanley Hotel encourages guests to explore the room's haunted reputation and to share their experiences with others. The hotel staff is well versed in the lore of Room 217 and is happy to answer questions and provide information about the room's history and paranormal activity. Room 217 today is a carefully curated blend of history, mystery, and modern comfort. It is a place where guests can immerse themselves in the legends of the Stanley Hotel, explore their own beliefs about the paranormal, and perhaps even encounter something that defies explanation. The guidelines in place ensure the room remains a protected space, allowing the stories to continue without disruption or disrespect. The story of Room 217 and the Stanley Hotel is one that continues to unfold, a narrative woven with threads of history, tragedy, popular culture, and the enduring human fascination with the unknown. Despite countless investigations, numerous personal accounts, and the scrutiny of skeptics, the mystery of what truly occurs within those walls remains unsolved. The enduring question lingers: is Room 217 truly haunted, or are the reported phenomena simply the product of psychological factors, environmental conditions, and the power of suggestion? The lack of definitive proof, either for or against the existence of paranormal activity, is precisely what makes Room 217 so captivating. the ambiguity allows for endless speculation and interpretation. Inviting each visitor to form their own conclusions based on their personal experiences and beliefs, the Stanley Hotel provides a stage for this exploration, a place where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blur, and where the possibility of encountering something extraordinary remains tantalizingly within reach. The legacy of Mrs. Wilson, whether she is a benevolent guardian, a restless spirit, or simply a figment of collective imagination, continues to shape the identity of Room 217. That her tragic story serves as a reminder of the human cost of progress and the enduring impact of the past. The room stands as a testament to her life, her work, and the enduring power of memory. The influence of Stephen King's The Shining cannot be overstated. The novel and film have transformed the Stanley Hotel into a cultural icon, a symbol of horror, and a destination for those seeking a thrill. While the hotel has embraced its connection to The Shining, it is important to remember that the story is ultimately a work of fiction. The real-life events that inspired King's novel are far more nuanced and complex, and they deserve to be explored with respect and sensitivity. Ultimately, the question of whether or not Room 217 is haunted is a matter of personal belief. There is no scientific consensus on the existence of ghosts or other paranormal phenomena, and the evidence for and against their existence is largely anecdotal. Each individual must weigh the evidence for themselves and decide what they believe to be true. Perhaps the true value of Room 217 lies not in whether it is haunted, but in the questions it raises about the nature of reality, the power of the human mind, and the enduring mysteries of the universe. The room serves as a mirror, reflecting our own beliefs, fears, and hopes back at us. It invites us to confront the unknown, to challenge our assumptions, and to consider the possibility that there is more to the world than meets the eye. As you ponder the possibility of the paranormal in Room 217, consider the words of Carl Sagan: "The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence." Just because we cannot definitively prove the existence of ghosts does not mean that they do not exist. The mysteries of the universe are vast and complex, and there is still much that we do not understand. So, the next time you find yourself in Estes Park, Colorado, consider a visit to the Stanley Hotel and a stay in Room 217. Whether you encounter a ghost, experience a strange phenomenon, or simply enjoy the room's historic charm, you are sure to come away with a new appreciation for the enduring mystery of Room 217 and the Stanley Hotel. The possibility, however slim, that something truly extraordinary could occur is, perhaps, the greatest allure of all. Philadelphia, a city steeped in history, boasts landmarks that whisper tales of revolution, innovation, and, in some cases, lingering unease. Among these historical touchstones stands Eastern State Penitentiary, a formidable structure of imposing Gothic architecture that once housed some of the nation's most notorious criminals. More than just a relic of penal history, Eastern State is a place where the veil between worlds seems thin, where former guards and curious tourists alike have reported unsettling encounters with a shadowy figure, believed to be the restless spirit of an inmate who vanished from a locked cell without a trace. To truly understand the chilling atmosphere that permeates Eastern State, one must delve into its grim history. Opened in 1829, the penitentiary was a radical experiment in penal reform, built on the principles of the Pennsylvania system. It aimed to rehabilitate criminals through solitary confinement and reflection. The imposing structure, designed by architect John Haviland, was intended to inspire awe and repentance. Its massive stone walls, towering guard towers, and labyrinthine cell blocks created an environment of isolation and despair. Inmates were kept in individual cells, each equipped with a small exercise yard. They were forbidden from speaking to one another, and their faces were covered when moved within the prison. The goal was to break their spirits and force them to confront their crimes in silence. This system, though intended to be humane, quickly devolved into a form of psychological torture. The silence became deafening, the isolation maddening. Inmates suffered mental breakdowns, and some even took their own lives. As the years passed, Eastern State abandoned the Pennsylvania system, but its reputation for brutality remained. Overcrowding became rampant, and the prison became a breeding ground for violence and disease. Despite its decline, Eastern State continued to house some of the most dangerous criminals in the country, including Al Capone and Willie Sutton. Eastern State Penitentiary was finally closed in 1971, after 142 years of operation. For a time, the building stood abandoned, slowly decaying under the elements. Vandals roamed its corridors, and nature began to reclaim its territory. Yet, even in its derelict state, Eastern State held a strange allure. Rumors of hauntings began to circulate, fueled by the prison's dark history and the countless stories of suffering that had occurred within its walls. In the 1990s, Eastern State Penitentiary was reopened as a historical site. Today, visitors can explore the crumbling cell blocks, wander through the overgrown yards, and learn about the prison's controversial history. But for many, the real draw is the possibility of encountering something else. The penitentiary's imposing architecture contributes significantly to its eerie atmosphere. The long, dark corridors, the peeling paint, and the rusted cell doors all create a sense of unease. Sunlight struggles to penetrate the thick stone walls, leaving many areas in perpetual shadow. The silence, though not as absolute as it once was, is still palpable, broken only by the occasional creak or groan of the aging structure. The sheer scale of the prison is also overwhelming. With its hundreds of cells and miles of corridors, it's easy to get lost and disoriented. The feeling of being trapped, even as a visitor, is undeniable. It's a place where the past seems to linger, where the echoes of suffering and despair can still be felt. Eastern State Penitentiary is more than just a historical site. It's a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur. It's a place where the shadows whisper secrets, and where the stories of the past continue to haunt the present. And it all began, or at least gained significant traction, with the legend of the vanishing inmate and the shadowy figure that continues to be seen darting between the cell blocks, a chilling reminder of the prison's dark and troubled past. The stage is set, the scene is prepared, and the mystery is ready to unfold. With the stage set and the atmosphere established, it's time to delve into the heart of our ghostly tale, the legend of the vanishing inmate. While the exact details have become clouded by the passage of time and the embellishments of countless retellings, the core narrative remains chillingly consistent. Sometime in the late 19th or early 20th century, the records are frustratingly vague. An inmate incarcerated at Eastern State Penitentiary seemingly vanished from his locked cell without a trace. The man, let's call him Joseph Fingers Bell, was serving a sentence for armed robbery. He was known for his meticulous planning and daring heists, but also for his volatile temper. He wasn't a model prisoner, racking up infractions for insubordination and petty theft within the prison walls, but he was also considered intelligent and resourceful, a man who might be capable of extraordinary feats, even within the confines of Eastern State. His cell, located in Cell Block 4, a particularly grim section of the prison known for its high rate of inmate suicides and mental breakdowns, was a standard design: a single cot, a wash basin, and a bucket for waste. The walls were thick stone, the door made of solid iron bars. There was no window, no secret passage, no obvious means of escape. The night of his disappearance was unremarkable. The guards made their rounds, checking each cell. Bell was accounted for during the 10 p.m. head count that he was reportedly agitated, pacing his cell and muttering to himself, but this was not unusual behavior for him. The guard on duty noted nothing out of the ordinary. The next morning, during the 6 a.m. head count, Bell was gone. The cell door was still locked, the bars intact. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken windows, no evidence of a struggle. The cell was exactly as it had been the night before, except for the unsettling absence of its occupant. Panic erupted. The guards launched a thorough search of the prison, scouring every cell, every corridor, every nook and cranny. They even searched the sewers and the surrounding grounds. But Bell was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had simply ceased to exist. The authorities were baffled. How could a man vanish from a locked cell without leaving any trace? Theories abounded. ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Some speculated that Bell had bribed a guard to help him escape, others believed that he had discovered a secret passage, a hidden tunnel leading out of the prison. Still others whispered of supernatural forces, of a prison so steeped in despair that it could swallow a man whole. A thorough investigation was launched, but it yielded no answers. The guards were interrogated, the prison records were scrutinized, and the surrounding area was searched again and again, but Bell remained elusive. The case eventually went cold, becoming a local legend, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lay hidden within the walls of Eastern State Penitentiary. The official explanation was that Bell had somehow managed to escape, perhaps with the help of an accomplice. But this explanation was never entirely satisfactory. It failed to account for the locked cell, the lack of evidence, and the sheer impossibility of escaping from Eastern State Penitentiary without leaving a trace. The legend of Joseph Fingers Bell grew over the years, becoming intertwined with the prison's already dark and mysterious reputation that he became a symbol of the prison's hidden secrets, a testament to the power of despair, and a chilling reminder of the possibility of the impossible. And it is this legend, this unsolved mystery, that serves as the foundation for the many tales of hauntings that continue to be told about Eastern State Penitentiary, particularly those involving a shadowy figure that seems forever bound to the prison walls. This shadowy figure, many believe, is the lingering spirit of Joseph Fingers Bell, forever searching for a way out of the prison that claimed him. The mystery surrounding Joseph Fingers Bell's disappearance only deepened the sense of unease that already permeated Eastern State Penitentiary. It wasn't long before whispers began to circulate, not just about the missing inmate, but about something else, something darker, something unseen yet felt. These whispers gave rise to the first reports of the shadowy figure, a fleeting presence glimpsed in the corners of the eye, a chill in the air, a feeling of being watched when no one was there. The earliest accounts of the shadowy figure came primarily from guards who worked the night shifts, those who spent hours patrolling the desolate cell blocks in near silence. These were men accustomed to the prison's oppressive atmosphere, hardened by years of dealing with criminals and witnessing the darker side of human nature. They were not easily spooked, yet, even these seasoned veterans began to report unsettling experiences. One recurring detail in these early reports was the figure's location. Sightings were most common in cell block 4, the same section of the prison where Bell had vanished. The figure was often seen darting between the cells, as if searching for something or someone. Sometimes, it would simply stand in the shadows, watching the guards as they made their rounds. Descriptions of the shadowy figure were remarkably consistent, considering the circumstances. Witnesses described it as being roughly human in shape, but lacking distinct features. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal in appearance, and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Some described it as being cloaked or shrouded, while others simply said it looked like a dark void in the shape of a man. One guard, a man named Thomas, recounted his experience during a late-night patrol in the early 1920s that he was walking down cell block 4 when he noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye. He turned to investigate, but saw nothing. He continued his patrol, but the feeling of being watched persisted. As he reached the end of the cell block, he glanced back and saw it, a tall, dark figure standing in the shadows of one of the cells. He couldn't make out any details, but he could feel its presence, a cold, malevolent energy that sent shivers down his spine. He froze, unsure of what to do. The figure remained motionless for what seemed like an eternity, then slowly faded away into the darkness. Another guard, a woman named Sarah, who worked at Eastern State much later, in the 1960s, before its closure, reported a similar experience. She was making her rounds one night when she heard a faint whisper coming from one of the cells. She stopped to listen, but the whisper ceased. She cautiously approached the cell and peered inside. It was empty. As she turned to leave, she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. She gasped and spun around, but there was nothing there. She fled the cell block, convinced that she had encountered something supernatural. These early reports were often dismissed as tricks of the light, the product of overactive imaginations, or the result of The guards being under stress, the prison administration was reluctant to acknowledge the possibility of hauntings, fearing that it would undermine their authority and create unrest among the inmates. However, the consistency of the reports, coupled with the prison's already dark and troubled history, began to fuel the rumors and legends surrounding Eastern State Penitentiary. The shadowy figure became a symbol of the prison's haunted reputation, a chilling reminder of the suffering and despair that had occurred within its walls, and as the years passed, the sightings continued, not just from guards, but also from visitors and paranormal investigators, further solidifying Eastern State Penitentiary's place as one of the most haunted locations in America. The initial whispers grew into a chorus of voices, all echoing the same unsettling truth: something was not right within those walls. Beyond the general descriptions and fleeting glimpses, some former guards at Eastern State Penitentiary offered more detailed and chilling personal accounts of their encounters with the shadowy figure. These stories, often shared years after their service, when the fear of ridicule or professional repercussions had subsided, provide a deeper insight into the psychological impact of the prison and the enduring mystery of its most famous haunting point. One such account comes from a former guard named Samuel, who worked at Eastern State during the 1950s. Samuel was a pragmatic man, not prone to flights of fancy. He joined the prison service after serving in the military, seeking a stable career. He initially dismissed the rumors of hauntings as nonsense, the product of bored guards and impressionable inmates. However, his skepticism was challenged one cold November night. Samuel was assigned to patrol cell block 6, another section of the prison known for its unsettling atmosphere. It was late, around 3 a.m., and the prison was eerily quiet. As he walked down the cell block, he noticed a faint light emanating from one of the cells. He cautiously approached the cell and peered inside. He saw nothing, but the light persisted. He checked the neighboring cells, but they were all empty and dark. Confused, he returned to the first cell and looked again. This time, he saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the cell, bathed in an ethereal glow. Samuel described the figure as being tall and gaunt, with long, skeletal limbs. It was cloaked in what appeared to be tattered rags, and its face was hidden in shadow. The figure seemed to radiate an intense cold, and Samuel felt a sudden wave of nausea. He froze, unable to move or speak. The figure remained motionless, its gaze fixed on Samuel. After what seemed like an eternity, the light faded, and the figure vanished. Samuel was shaken to his core. He ran from the cell block, his heart pounding in his chest. He reported the incident to his supervisor, who dismissed it as a hallucination. However, Samuel knew what he had seen. He couldn't explain it, but he couldn't deny it either. He continued to work at Eastern State for several more years, but he never forgot that night. He always felt a sense of unease whenever he patrolled cell block 6, and he never again dismissed the rumors of hauntings as mere superstition. Another account comes from a former guard named Elizabeth, who worked at Eastern State during the 1940s. Elizabeth was one of the few female guards to work at the prison, and she faced considerable prejudice from her male colleagues. She was determined to prove herself, and she approached her job with professionalism and dedication. However, even she was not immune to the prison's unsettling atmosphere. Elizabeth recalled an incident that occurred during a routine cell search. She was assigned to search cell block 2, a section of the prison known for its rebellious inmates. As she was searching one of the cells, she felt a sudden chill in the air. She turned around and saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. The figure was tall and thin, and its face was obscured by a dark hood. It seemed to be blocking her exit, preventing her from leaving the cell. Elizabeth felt a surge of panic. She drew her baton and ordered the figure to move. The figure remained motionless, its presence growing more menacing. Elizabeth raised her baton and prepared to strike, but as she did, the figure suddenly vanished. She was left standing alone in the cell, her heart pounding in her chest. Elizabeth never told anyone about the incident, fearing that she would be ridiculed or dismissed as hysterical. However, the experience stayed with her for the rest of her life. She became convinced that Eastern State was haunted, and she often wondered about the identity of the shadowy figure she had Encountered, these personal accounts, along with countless others, paint a chilling picture of life at Eastern State Penitentiary. They reveal the psychological toll that the prison took on its staff, and they offer a glimpse into the mysteries that continue to haunt its crumbling walls. The guards' experiences, though often dismissed, provide compelling evidence that something truly unsettling resides within Eastern State, something that defies explanation and continues to captivate and terrify those who dare to venture within its gates. While the personal accounts of former guards offer compelling and often chilling narratives, it's important to acknowledge the counterarguments and rational explanations offered by skeptics, historians, architects, and former administrators of Eastern State Penitentiary. Often present alternative interpretations of the reported sightings, suggesting that they can be attributed to psychological factors, architectural anomalies, or simply tricks of the light. One common argument is that the prison's oppressive atmosphere and history of suffering created a breeding ground for mass hysteria. The isolation, the darkness, and the constant fear of violence could easily lead to heightened anxiety and suggestibility, making guards and inmates more prone to experiencing hallucinations or misinterpreting ordinary events. Dr. Emily Carter, a historian specializing in the history of prisons and penal reform, argues that the power of suggestion plays a significant role in the reported hauntings at Eastern State. The prison has a very strong narrative, she explains. Visitors and staff are constantly reminded of its dark history and the suffering that occurred within its walls. This creates a psychological environment where people are more likely to perceive unexplained phenomena. Another explanation focuses on the prison's unique architecture. Eastern State Penitentiary was designed to be disorienting and intimidating. The long, dark corridors, the towering walls, and the lack of natural light can easily play tricks on the eyes, creating optical illusions and distorting perceptions. Architectural anomalies, such as uneven floors, oddly shaped rooms, and unexpected shadows, can also contribute to the feeling of unease and the perception of movement or figures in the periphery. The prison's deteriorating condition, with its crumbling walls and peeling paint, further enhances this effect. Former administrators of Eastern State have also offered more prosaic explanations for the reported sightings. They suggest that many of the unexplained phenomena can be attributed to faulty wiring, drafts from broken windows, or the sounds of the aging building settling. They also point out that the prison was often understaffed, particularly during the night shifts, which could lead to guards being more vigilant and therefore more prone to misinterpreting ordinary events as something supernatural. Furthermore, the lack of proper lighting in many areas of the prison could easily lead to misidentification of objects or people in the shadows. The guards, often tired and stressed, might mistake a shadow for a figure or an echo for a whisper. The skeptics also question the reliability of eyewitness testimony, particularly when it comes to paranormal phenomena. They argue that memory is fallible and that people's perceptions can be easily influenced by their beliefs and expectations. The fact that many of the reported sightings occurred years after the guards had left their service raises further questions about the accuracy of their recollections. It's also worth noting that the stories of hauntings at Eastern State have become a popular part of the prison's identity as a historical site. This could create a bias among visitors and staff, making them more likely to report unexplained phenomena or to interpret ambiguous events as evidence of paranormal activity. While the personal accounts of former guards are compelling, it's important to consider these alternative explanations and to approach the topic of hauntings at Eastern State Penitentiary with a critical and open mind. The prison's history, architecture, and psychological environment all contribute to its eerie atmosphere, but it's not necessarily evidence of supernatural activity. The debate between believers and skeptics continues to this day, adding another layer of intrigue to the enduring mystery of Eastern State Penitentiary. Despite the skeptical counterarguments, the reports of paranormal activity at Eastern State Penitentiary did not cease with its closure in 1971. In fact, as the prison transitioned into a historical site and became more accessible to the public, the sightings only increased, drawing the attention of paranormal investigators from around the world. The Modern era of Eastern State hauntings is marked by the use of sophisticated technology and a more systematic approach to documenting and analyzing unexplained phenomena, with the advent of ghost hunting equipment like EMF, electromagnetic field meters, EVP, electronic voice phenomena recorders, and infrared cameras. Paranormal investigators began to conduct more thorough and scientific investigations of Eastern State Penitentiary. These investigations often involved spending hours, or even days, within the prison walls, attempting to capture evidence of paranormal activity. EMF meters are used to detect fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, which some believe are associated with the presence of spirits. EVP recorders are used to capture disembodied voices or other unexplained sound. Infrared cameras are used to detect temperature changes, which some believe can indicate the presence of a spirit. Many paranormal investigation teams have visited Eastern State over the years, each with their own unique approach and methodology. Some teams focus on specific areas of the prison known for paranormal activity, such as Cell Block 4, where Joseph Fingers Bell vanished, and Cell Block 12, known for its intense feelings of dread and despair. Other teams attempt to communicate with spirits through seances or other forms of mediumship. The results of these investigations have been mixed. Some teams have reported capturing compelling evidence of paranormal activity, such as high EMF readings, unexplained voices, and temperature fluctuations. Other teams have found nothing, or have been unable to rule out natural explanations for the phenomena they observed. One notable investigation was conducted by a team of paranormal investigators from a well-known paranormal television show. They spent several nights at Eastern State, using a variety of equipment to document their findings. During their investigation, they reported experiencing numerous unexplained phenomena, including disembodied voices, moving objects, and apparitions. They also captured several EVPs, including one that seemed to say the name Joseph. Another investigation, conducted by a team of independent paranormal researchers, focused on Cell Block 4. They used EMF meters to map the electromagnetic fields within the cell block and found several areas with unusually high readings. They also captured several EVPs, including one that seemed to be a faint whisper saying, "Help me." However, it's important to note that the evidence collected by paranormal investigators is often subjective and open to interpretation. Skeptics argue that many of the reported phenomena can be explained by natural causes, such as electromagnetic interference, drafts, or the sounds of the building settling. They also point out that EVP recordings can be easily misinterpreted, and that apparitions can be caused by tricks of the light or the power of suggestion. Despite the skepticism, the modern sightings and investigations at Eastern State Penitentiary have continued to fuel the prison's haunted reputation. The use of technology has added a new layer of intrigue to the mystery, and the ongoing debate between believers and skeptics keeps the stories of Eastern State alive in the public imagination. The prison remains a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts, who are drawn to its dark history and the possibility of encountering something beyond the realm of ordinary experience. The search for answers continues, fueled by both scientific curiosity and the enduring human fascination with the unknown. To truly understand the enduring allure of Eastern State Penitentiary, one must hear directly from those who have ventured within its walls in recent years and experienced the unsettling atmosphere firsthand. While paranormal investigators bring a scientific approach to their explorations, it is the personal accounts of ordinary tourists that often resonate most deeply, capturing the emotional impact of the prison and the lingering sense of unease that pervades its crumbling cell blocks. Consider the story of Sarah, a young woman from Ohio who visited Eastern State Penitentiary during a family vacation. Sarah was not a believer in ghosts, but she was fascinated by history and architecture. She convinced her family to include Eastern State on their itinerary, drawn by its imposing appearance and the promise of a unique historical experience. As they walked through the prison, Sarah felt a growing sense of unease. The long, dark corridors, the crumbling walls, and the heavy silence created a palpable atmosphere of despair. She tried to dismiss her feelings as simply the product of the prison's history, But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. In cell block 4, the location of Joseph Fingers Bell's disappearance, Sarah experienced something truly unsettling. She was standing in the center of the cell block, listening to the tour guide describe the legend of the vanishing inmate, when she felt a sudden chill in the air. The temperature dropped noticeably, and she felt a tingling sensation on the back of her neck. She turned around and saw it, a shadowy figure standing in one of the cells. The figure was tall and thin, and it seemed to absorb the light around it. She couldn't make out any details, but she could feel its presence, a cold, malevolent energy that seemed to emanate from the figure. Sarah gasped and pointed at the figure, but her family didn't see anything. They dismissed her claims as a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. But Sarah knew what she had seen. She couldn't explain it, but she couldn't deny it either. She tried to shake off the experience, but the feeling of being watched persisted. As they continued their tour, she felt as if the shadowy figure was following them, lurking in the corners of her eye. She became increasingly anxious and agitated, and eventually asked her family to leave the prison. Outside, in the sunlight, Sarah felt a sense of relief. The oppressive atmosphere of Eastern State seemed to lift, and she began to question what she had seen. Was it just her imagination? Was it a trick of the light? Or had she truly encountered something supernatural? The experience at Eastern State Penitentiary had a profound impact on Sarah. She became fascinated by the paranormal and began to research the history of the prison and the stories of its hauntings. She also joined an online forum for paranormal enthusiasts, where she shared her story and connected with others who had experienced similar phenomena at Eastern State. Sarah's story is just one example of the many unsettling encounters that tourists have reported at Eastern State Penitentiary. These personal accounts, along with the findings of paranormal investigators, contribute to the prison's enduring haunted reputation and its status as one of the most chilling and mysterious locations in America. They serve as a reminder that even in the modern era, there are still places where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur, and where the echoes of the past continue to resonate in the present. The recurring sightings of the shadowy figure, particularly in cell block 4, naturally lead to speculation about its origins and its connection to the legend of Joseph Fingers Bell. Is this spectral presence simply a manifestation of the prison's dark history and the collective suffering of its inmates, or is it something more specific, something tied to the unsolved mystery of Bell's disappearance? One prevailing theory is that the shadowy figure is, in fact, the lingering spirit of Joseph Fingers Bell, forever trapped within the walls of Eastern State Penitentiary. This theory suggests that Bell's sudden and unexplained disappearance left his spirit restless, unable to move on to the afterlife. He is condemned to wander the cell blocks, searching for a way out, or perhaps reliving the final moments of his life. If this theory is true, then the question remains: how did Bell disappear in the first place? The locked cell and the lack of any evidence of escape suggest that something extraordinary occurred. Some speculate that Bell may have discovered a hidden passage or a secret tunnel leading out of the prison. While no such passage has ever been found, the possibility remains a tantalizing one. The prison's architecture is complex and labyrinthine, and it's conceivable that a secret passage could have been concealed within its walls for centuries. Another theory, somewhat more outlandish, suggests that Bell may have been the subject of secret experiments conducted within the prison. During the early 20th century, there were reports of unethical medical experiments being performed on inmates in prisons and asylums across the country. It's possible that Bell was subjected to some sort of experiment that went wrong, leading to his disappearance and the creation of the shadowy figure. A third theory, leaning towards the supernatural, posits that the prison itself is a conduit for paranormal energy. Eastern State Penitentiary was built on land that was once considered sacred by Native American tribes. Some believe that the land is inherently sensitive to spiritual activity, and that the prison's history of suffering and despair has amplified this sensitivity, creating a vortex of paranormal energy. According to this theory, Bell's disappearance may have been caused by some sort of supernatural force that pulled him into another dimension. Regardless of the explanation, the connection Between the shadowy figure and Joseph Fingers Bell remains a compelling one. The fact that the figure is most often seen in cell block 4, the location of Bell's disappearance, lends credence to the theory that they are connected. The figure's tall, thin frame also matches the description of Bell, who was reportedly a gaunt and wiry man. Moreover, the figure's behavior suggests that it is searching for something. Witnesses have described it as darting between cells, peering into the darkness, and seeming restless and agitated. This behavior could be interpreted as Bell's spirit searching for a way out of the prison, or perhaps searching for answers to the mystery of his disappearance. Ultimately, the true connection between the shadowy figure and Joseph Fingers Bell may never be known. The mystery surrounding Bell's disappearance remains unsolved, and the nature of the shadowy figure remains elusive. However, the theories and speculations surrounding their connection continue to fuel the legend of Eastern State Penitentiary and its enduring haunted reputation. The prison stands as a testament to the power of the unknown, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur, and where the echoes of the past continue to resonate in the present. Eastern State Penitentiary's aura extends far beyond just a ghost story. It's a place where the very stones seem to absorb and radiate the suffering and despair of generations. The prison's psychological impact on visitors is undeniable, often leaving them with a profound sense of unease, sadness, or even fear. This raises the question: is the haunting of Eastern State simply a product of its history and atmosphere, or is there something more to it? The sheer weight of history that presses down on visitors as they walk through the prison is palpable. The stories of solitary confinement, brutality, and madness are etched into the walls, creating an environment that is ripe for suggestion. The long, dark corridors, the crumbling cells, and the heavy silence all contribute to the feeling of being trapped in a place of immense suffering. Many visitors report experiencing a range of emotional and physical sensations while touring Eastern State. Some feel a sudden chill in the air, even on a warm day. Others report feeling a sense of being watched, or of being touched by unseen hands. Still others experience feelings of sadness, anxiety, or even panic. These sensations are often attributed to the prison's residual haunting, the idea that the energy of past events can linger in a place, creating an atmosphere that affects those who visit it. According to this theory, the suffering and despair that occurred at Eastern State have left an indelible mark on the prison, creating an environment that is conducive to paranormal phenomena. However, it's also important to consider the psychological factors that contribute to the prison's haunting. The power of suggestion, the expectation of paranormal activity, and the already heightened emotional state of visitors can all play a role in their experiences. The prison's narrative, which is carefully curated by tour guides and historical exhibits, emphasizes its dark history and the stories of its hauntings. This can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, where visitors are more likely to perceive unexplained phenomena simply because they are expecting to. The prison's architecture also contributes to its psychological impact. The long, dark corridors and the small, cramped cells can create a feeling of claustrophobia and isolation. The lack of natural light and the heavy silence can further enhance the sense of unease. Furthermore, the prison's deteriorating condition can add to the feeling of despair and decay. The crumbling walls, the peeling paint, and the rusted cell doors all serve as reminders of the prison's past and the suffering that occurred within its walls. It's also possible that some visitors are simply more susceptible to suggestion or more attuned to subtle environmental cues. People with a strong imagination, a belief in the paranormal, or a history of anxiety or depression may be more likely to experience unsettling sensations at Eastern State. Regardless of the explanation, the psychological impact of Eastern State Penitentiary is undeniable. The prison is a place that can evoke strong emotions and leave a lasting impression on those who visit it. Whether these experiences are due to paranormal activity, psychological factors, or a combination of both, they contribute to the prison's enduring haunted reputation and its status as one of the most chilling and mysterious locations in America. The aura of Eastern State is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon, a product of its history, its architecture, and the human experiences that have shaped it over the centuries. The story of Eastern State Penitentiary, the vanishing inmate, and the shadowy figure is a multifaceted narrative, one that blends historical fact with anecdotal evidence, skeptical counterarguments with paranormal investigations, and psychological impact with enduring mystery. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration, it's time to summarize the key elements and consider the lingering questions that remain. The central mystery revolves around the disappearance of Joseph Fingers Bell, an inmate who seemingly vanished from a locked cell in the late 19th or early 20th century. His unexplained disappearance gave rise to rumors of hauntings and the emergence of a shadowy figure, a tall, dark presence that has been cited by guards, tourists, and paranormal investigators alike. Over the years, countless individuals have reported unsettling experiences within the prison walls, from feelings of being watched and sudden drops in temperature to unexplained noises and apparitions. These experiences have fueled the prison's haunted reputation and drawn paranormal enthusiasts from around the world. Skeptics, however, offer rational explanations for these phenomena, attributing them to psychological factors, architectural anomalies, or simply tricks of the light. They question the reliability of eyewitness testimony and the potential bias created by the prison's haunted narrative. Despite the skeptical counterarguments, the reports of paranormal activity at Eastern State persist. Modern investigations, utilizing sophisticated equipment like EMF meters and EVP recorders, have yielded mixed results, with some teams reporting compelling evidence of paranormal activity while others have found nothing. Theories abound regarding the connection between the shadowy figure and Joseph Fingers Bell. Some believe that the figure is Bell's restless spirit, forever trapped within the prison walls, searching for a way out or answers to his disappearance. Others suggest that Bell may have been the subject of secret experiments or that the prison itself is a conduit for paranormal energy. The psychological impact of Eastern State Penitentiary is undeniable. The prison's history of suffering and despair has created an atmosphere that is conducive to unsettling experiences. Whether these experiences are due to paranormal activity, psychological factors, or a combination of both, they contribute to the prison's enduring haunted reputation. Ultimately, the mystery of Eastern State Penitentiary remains unsolved. The disappearance of Joseph Fingers Bell, the nature of the shadowy figure, and the true cause of the prison's hauntings are all questions that continue to elude definitive answers. However, the enduring mystery is part of what makes Eastern State so compelling. It is a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur, where the echoes of the past continue to resonate in the present, and where the possibility of the impossible lingers in the air. As you leave Eastern State Penitentiary, you are left with a lingering sense of unease and the question of whether the prison is truly haunted. The stories you have heard, the experiences you have imagined, and the atmosphere you have felt all contribute to a haunting that is both real and imagined, a product of history, psychology, and the enduring human fascination with the unknown. The shadows whisper, the stones remember, and the mystery endures. And so, we arrive at the heart of the matter. Is Eastern State Penitentiary truly haunted? After delving into its history, exploring the legend of the vanishing inmate Joseph Fingers Bell, examining the countless reports of the shadowy figure, and considering both the believer and skeptic viewpoints, the question remains stubbornly unanswered. Perhaps that is the point. There is no definitive proof, no irrefutable evidence to definitively declare Eastern State Penitentiary a haven for restless spirits. The stories are subjective, the evidence circumstantial, and the rational explanations always linger in the background, offering alternative interpretations. Yet, there is also something undeniably compelling about the prison's atmosphere, something that transcends mere history and architecture. The weight of suffering, the echoes of despair, and the lingering sense of unease are palpable, affecting visitors in profound and often inexplicable ways. The personal accounts of former guards and tourists alike cannot be easily dismissed. The consistency in their descriptions of the shadowy figure, the intensity of their emotional reactions, and the enduring impact of their experiences suggest that something truly unsettling resides within those walls. The paranormal investigations, while often inconclusive, offer tantalizing glimpses into the possibility of something beyond the realm of ordinary explanation. The EMF readings, the EVPs, and the reported apparitions, even if open to interpretation, cannot be entirely ignored. The legend of Joseph Fingers Bell adds another layer of intrigue to the mystery: his unexplained disappearance, the locked cell, and the lack of any evidence of escape create a void that invites speculation and fuels the imagination. Is he the shadowy figure that continues to haunt the prison? Is he trapped between worlds, forever searching for a way out? The theories that attempt to connect the shadowy figure to Bell, whether through restless spirits, secret experiments, or paranormal conduits, offer tantalizing possibilities, but ultimately remain unproven. The skeptical counterarguments provide a valuable perspective, reminding us to approach the topic of hauntings with a critical and open mind. Psychological factors, architectural anomalies, and the power of suggestion undoubtedly play a role in the reported phenomena at Eastern State. However, even when considering these rational explanations, the mystery persists. The prison's aura, its ability to evoke strong emotions and leave a lasting impression on visitors, is undeniable. It is a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur, where the echoes of the past continue to resonate in the present. So, is Eastern State Penitentiary truly haunted? The answer, perhaps, lies not in definitive proof, but in the individual experience. Each visitor brings their own beliefs, their own expectations, and their own susceptibility to suggestion. Some may leave with a sense of wonder and awe, convinced that they have encountered something supernatural. Others may remain skeptical, attributing their experiences to psychological factors or environmental influences. Ultimately, the decision of whether to believe in the hauntings of Eastern State Penitentiary is a personal one. But regardless of your beliefs, the prison's enduring mystery will linger in your mind long after you have left its crumbling walls behind. The shadows whisper, the stones remember, and the question remains: is Eastern State Penitentiary truly haunted? Or is it simply a place where the human imagination runs wild, fueled by history, atmosphere, and the enduring fascination with the unknown? Perhaps, the answer lies in the shadows themselves, waiting to be discovered. The skeptic's arrival. The converted bait shop, her makeshift lab, reeked of old coffee grounds and damp rot. Sarah's nose wrinkled instinctively. She adjusted the headlamp securing her vision in the confined space. A lone, flickering bulb cast grotesque shadows from the walls, papered over with sun-bleached advertisements for fishing tackle. This was it, epicenter of her probe into Lake Lanier's peculiarities. She scoffed. The sound bouncing off the walls, peculiarities. That's what the grant committee had called them. A bloodless term, masking the local whispers of phantoms, specters, and a bottomless aquatic graveyard. Sarah unzipped her laptop bag, a precisely arranged haven for delicate instruments. Out came the water quality probe, followed by sonar equipment, then the digital recorder intended to capture any aberrant sounds. A shiver traced her spine, not from trepidation, but from the sheer outlandishness of the entire endeavor. Setting up her workspace, the small table groaned under the burden of technology. The laptop screen ignited, displaying a map of Lanier pinpricked with colored markers. Each denoted a reported incident: phantom lights, inexplicable engine failures, and the inevitable tales of drowned figures ascending from the murk. Sarah tapped a marker close to the drowned remains of Oscarville. The log described a woman in a bridal gown, features obscured by a curtain of ebony hair. The witness claimed she hovered just beneath the surface, eyes vacant and unseeing. Sure, Sarah muttered, rolling her eyes, and I suppose she invited you to a ghostly tea party. She summoned historical water data for that precise location. The readings were unremarkable, squarely within acceptable parameters for a freshwater lake. Oxygen saturation, alkalinity, thermal gradients, all conformed to known standards. Nothing indicated anything supernatural at all. Cognitive bias, she announced to the empty room. Pure and simple, people find what they're primed to expect. Later, under a blazing afternoon sun, Sarah arrived at the marina to prep her research vessel, a stout aluminum craft christened the Challenger. Sunlight danced on the water, the air a cocktail of exhaust and sunscreen. A group of teenagers shrieked with laughter near the docks, their buoyant joy a sharp contrast to the macabre narrative she'd absorbed. While struggling with a stubborn mooring line, a deep voice rumbled, "Need a hand there, missy?" Sarah turned to face an older man leaning against a weathered piling, his face a roadmap of wrinkles etched by years of sun and wind. A faded baseball cap shaded his eyes, and his t-shirt boasted, "Lake Lanier, got hooked." "I've almost got it," she said, wrenching at the rope, "thanks, though." He chuckled, a low, resonant sound, famous last words, "Lanier isn't always so accommodating." He sauntered closer, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Name's Eli, Eli Walker." "Sarah Chen," she replied, finally freeing the line. "I'm conducting some research on the lake." Eli's brow lifted. "Research, you say? What sort?" "Water quality, mainly," she hedged, choosing to downplay the paranormal aspects. "I'm studying the long-term impact of urban development on the ecosystem." Eli's gaze lingered on the water, thoughtful. "That's one angle, I suppose, but there's more to this lake than meets the eye, Miss Chen." Sarah felt a prickle of irritation. "I'm quite aware of the area's history, Mr. Walker. I've reviewed the relevant reports." "Reports?" He scoffed again. "Those only skim the surface, they leave out the whispers you catch on windless nights, the spectral shadows that flit in the moonlight. They fail to account for those swallowed whole, vanished without a trace." Sarah forced a cordial smile. "I'm sure there are logical explanations for those events." "Logical explanations?" Eli shook his head slowly. "Some things defy explanation, Miss Chen, some things are best left to rest." He paused, his eyes narrowing to slits. "This lake, she holds a grudge. She remembers the town she drowned, the lives she claimed, and she's in no hurry to forgive." Sarah found herself inexplicably perturbed. She was a scientist, dedicated to empiricism. She didn't credit ghosts or vengeful water spirits, yet, Eli's unwavering conviction, the knowing quality in his stare, caused a flicker of doubt in her skepticism. "Thank you for the local perspective, Mr. Walker," she said, trying to exude dismissiveness. "I'll keep that in mind." As Eli walked away, Sarah shivered. Despite the lingering heat, she returned to her boat, resolute in her focus. She conducted a diagnostic check on the engine, calibrated the sonar, and verified her sampling containers. The Challenger stood ready. She would be, too. That night, as darkness blanketed Lake Lanier, Sarah piloted the Challenger away from the marina, the engine purring powerfully. A crescent moon hung in the black expanse, casting a frail, unearthly light on the water's surface. She steered toward her initial sampling point, near the skeletal remains of the old bridge marking the former entrance to Oscarville. The lake was preternaturally still, its surface like polished obsidian. Only the gentle lapping of water against the hull punctuated the silence. Sarah activated the sonar, the screen painting a detailed picture of the lake bed. She logged the depth, sediment composition, and the location of any underwater debris. Everything appeared unremarkable. Reaching her destination, she killed the engine and dropped anchor. Silence descended, amplifying the chirping of insects from the faraway shore. Sarah inhaled deeply, attempting to quell her quickening pulse. She deployed the water quality sensor, carefully lowering it into the inky depths. She watched the readings on the laptop, her brow furrowed. The data mirrored her earlier observations. The water was clear, oxygen levels were stable, and there was no evidence of any anomalies. "See," she breathed, "just a regular lake." But even as she spoke, a tendril of unease tightened in her gut. The feeling of being scrutinized intensified, as if something lurked beneath the surface, waiting to stir. She searched the water, her gaze straining to penetrate the gloom. Nothing, only the lake, and the silence. Pressing in, abruptly, the sonar screen fractured, displaying a bizarre, warped image. Sarah gasped, her heart hammering. The shape resembled a human form, yet elongated and twisted, its details indistinct. That it seemed to be rising from the abyss, slowly approaching the surface. Sarah fixed her gaze on the screen, her mind in overdrive. Was it a glitch, a phantom signal, or something else? Then, an icy gust swept across the lake, piercing her skin. The boat bucked violently, throwing her against the rail. The engine choked and died, engulfing her in total darkness. Sarah frantically groped for her flashlight, her hands shaking. As the beam slashed through the blackness, she saw it. A glimmer. A soft, spectral luminescence, hovering just above the water. It pulsed with an unsettling radiance, growing more intense with each tick of the clock. It was drawing nearer. Sarah stared, her mind teetering. What was it? A ghost? An illusion? Or something far more terrifying? Then, she heard it. A faint, mournful susurrus, carried on the breeze. It sounded like a woman's voice, calling out from the void, "Help me." Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. She knew, with a bone-chilling certainty, that she was no longer the only sentient presence on Lake Lanier. Midnight on the lake. A platinum moon, full and weighty, dominated the inky canvas above. Its reflection shattered across Lake Lanier's slick surface. Sarah killed the motor. The abrupt cessation of noise amplified the nocturnal chorus of crickets emanating from the distant banks. The air hung thick and stagnant, a humid blanket far removed from the breezy days earlier that week. Even the gentle kiss of water against the hull of her compact research vessel sounded subdued, almost reverential. From a nearby crate, she retrieved a sterile collection vial, its cool glass a reassuringly tactile comfort against her gloved palm. The sonar anomalies data still niggled at the edge of her consciousness, a persistent challenge to her scientific pragmatism. These samples, the subsequent analyses, that was her domain, concrete, verifiable. She leaned over the gunwale, carefully submerging the bottle to avoid contamination. The moon cast long, spectral fingers from the bordering trees onto the lake floor, exaggerating the water's apparent depth, its enigmatic nature. She filled several vials, meticulously documenting each with the current date, time, and precise GPS readings. A sensation of surveillance settled upon her as she worked, not a malevolent presence, precisely, but an awareness, as if the lake itself scrutinized her, patiently observing. With the water samples secured, she readied the smaller, more sensitive sonar unit. This was the device that had registered the peculiar reading the other evening, the one coupled with an unfamiliar, unidentifiable sound. She twisted the key in the ignition. Silence, again, still nothing, just a frustrating, hollow click. "You have got to be kidding me," she breathed, her exhalation momentarily clouding the cool air. She tried once more, this time feathering the accelerator, but the engine remained stubbornly inert. A surge of annoyance gave way to a creeping disquiet. Of all the nights for mechanical failure, it chose this one, alone, adrift, miles from the shore, practically on top of the drowned town of Oscarville. She reached for the marine radio, then paused. The hour was late, and she loathed disrupting anyone unless absolutely necessary. Besides, a compact toolkit resided on board. Perhaps a simple fix awaited: a dislodged wire, an oversaturated engine. Inhaling deeply, she grabbed her flashlight and the toolbox. The light beam knifed through the darkness, highlighting the engine's innards. Methodically, she began scrutinizing the connections, her initial frustration slowly replaced by focused determination. Abruptly, the torchlight snagged on something shimmering on the water's surface. Straightening, she peered into the gloom. Initially, she dismissed it as a mere lunar reflection, but it shifted, coalescing into a distinct, pulsating sphere of light. Nothing she had ever encountered resembled an unearthly orb, radiating an inner glow, ascending gradually from the depths, not a garish glare, but soft and spellbinding, like a captured celestial body. Then another appeared, followed by another, until a constellation of these luminescent entities peppered the lake's surface around her craft. Sarah froze, the wrench slipping from her numb fingers and clattering against the boat's side. Her scientifically trained mind scrambled for a plausible explanation: bioluminescence, refraction patterns, an aberrant atmospheric phenomenon. Nothing resonated. These lacked the erratic flicker of fireflies or the diffuse radiance of algal blooms. They possessed structure, intent, almost. Intelligence, the air chilled abruptly, a keen, sudden drop that prickled her skin despite the night's relative mildness. She shivered, drawing her jacket closer. The lights throbbed in unison, their cadence hypnotic, alluring. She felt an odd kinship with them, a sense of witnessing something primordial and profound. One of the orbs drifted nearer, hovering just above the water. It seemed to scrutinize her, its light amplifying as it approached. Sarah stilled her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Fear wrestled with a peculiar sense of wonder. She felt an impulse to extend her hand, to connect, to comprehend. Instead, a primal urge took hold. This felt unnatural, inexplicable, profoundly wrong. She recoiled from the edge, her hand instinctively reaching for the emergency flare gun secured beneath the seat. As she groped for the gun, the orbs began to wane, their light diminishing as swiftly as it had emerged. One by one, they retreated beneath the lake's surface, leaving Sarah alone. In the darkness, the silence shattered only by the frantic drumbeat of her own pulse, she clutched the flare gun, her knuckles bone white. The feeling of being watched hadn't lessened. If anything, it intensified. She swept the shoreline with her gaze, her eyes struggling to pierce the oppressive blackness. The engine remained lifeless. She was marooned, haunted by the fleeting memory of the lights, and the chilling conviction that she was far from alone on Lake Lanier. Whispers of the drowned. The engine coughed its final breath, the sudden quiet amplifying the water's hushed rhythm against the boat. Frantically, Sarah jabbed at her phone. No bars. Inevitably, Lake Lanier had swallowed her lifeline whole. A savage gust slashed across the water, a frigid blade against her inadequate jacket. More than a breeze, it felt like an icy hammer blow, pressing down with palpable force. Shivers racked her frame, teeth clattering a frantic tattoo as she burrowed deeper into her collar. This wasn't normal. Autumn chill had morphed into Arctic bite with impossible speed. Her gaze swept the disturbed surface, now a canvas of dark, seething ripples. The luminous spheres had vanished, leaving only their lingering imprint on her mind. Reason clamored for explanation. A freak squall, a mirage born of exhaustion, but a cold dread, coiling in her gut, refused to be quelled. Then it appeared, near the bow, suspended just above the turbulent water. A form shimmered into being, not solid, not quite real, more like heat haze given shape, a wavering distortion that hinted at a human silhouette, translucent and ephemeral. It flickered like a faulty bulb, struggling to hold its form. Sarah's breath snagged. A scream threatened, but her limbs felt weighted, paralyzed by a primal terror. The figure remained still, its features indistinct, yet she sensed a profound sadness radiating from it. A bottomless well of sorrow that seeped into her marrow, her analytical mind, grounded in the tangible and provable, wrestled with the impossible spectacle. She was a researcher, a scientist, not a credulous tourist swayed by folklore. Her domain was sonar readings, lacustrine ecosystems, not apparitions. This can't be happening, she breathed, her voice a tremor, but the figure persisted, shimmering in the frigid air, an undeniable symbol of the unexplainable. It inclined its head, a subtle movement that sent another wave of icy fear crashing over her. It felt like scrutiny, like being observed with unnerving intensity. Panic surged. She needed action, anything to shatter this waking nightmare. Stumbling backward, she jostled the console, sending a metal thermos clattering. The sound sliced through the air, startling her and, surprisingly, causing the figure to waver more violently. Reactive to sound, was it vulnerable? A desperate idea sparked. She reached for her recorder, the tool she used to chronicle her investigations, her hands trembling so fiercely she almost dropped it. Activating it, she spoke, her voice a strained whisper. "Can you hear me?" The figure offered no obvious response. It remained poised above the water, a silent, spectral presence. But as she spoke, she noticed a change. The air around it seemed to thicken, to condense. Its form gained definition, the blurred edges sharpening imperceptibly. Heartened, she pressed on, her voice gaining a shaky resolve. "I'm not here to harm you. I just want to understand." It was madness, conversing with a phantom, but she was out of options. The alternative was to surrender to the encroaching terror. The figure remained mute, but Sarah fancied she detected a slight dip of its head, a gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps or merely the play of light, a trick of her frantic imagination. Then, a low, mournful resonance swept across the lake, a vibration that resonated within her chest, echoing the same deep sorrow she felt emanating from the figure. Not a voice, exactly, but something more fundamental, more raw. A lament, a cry of anguish that mirrored the whispers of the drowned. The sound intensified, building into a deafening crescendo, pressing down on her with crushing weight. Sarah clamped her hands over her ears, but the sound bypassed her defenses, reverberating within the confines of her skull. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the sound vanished, the figure shimmered once more, its form dissolving until it was gone, leaving behind only the biting wind and the restless water. Sarah stood, shivering, gasping, the recorder clutched in her trembling hand. The silence was absolute, broken only by the gentle slap of waves against the hull. Had she imagined it all, a delusion, a product of stress and deprivation? She glanced down at the recorder, its red light a steady pulse, tangible evidence. Rewinding the tape, her heart hammered against her ribs. When she pressed play, the only sound was static, pure, unrelenting static. Defeated, Sarah sagged against the console, her rational mind desperately grasped at the thread of hallucination, a trick of the light, anything to discredit what she'd witnessed. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Something extraordinary, something inexplicable, had unfolded on Lake Lanier tonight, and she wasn't sure she wanted the answers anymore. The lake held its secrets close, and they were starting to break their silence, echoes of the past. The static hissed from the digital recorder, a relentless white noise that seemed to amplify the silence of the shoreline. Sarah shivered, not entirely from the evening chill, the spectral figure, its mournful resonance. It felt too real to dismiss as hallucination, too specific to be a mere anomaly of the lake. Back at the cabin, the generator thrummed a defiant rhythm against the encroaching darkness as Sarah scrolled through digital archives, newspaper clippings, scanned documents, grainy photographs. A history of Lake Lanier, laid bare in the cold light of her laptop screen. The initial report celebrated progress: the Beaufort Dam, a monumental feat of engineering; Lake Lanier, a shimmering expanse promising recreation and hydroelectric power to a burgeoning Atlanta. But beneath the glossy pronouncements, the truth lurked. The creation of Lake Lanier had demanded sacrifice. 6 towns, Oscarville, among others, were deliberately flooded, homes, businesses, cemeteries, all submerged. To create the reservoir, families were given meager compensation, forced to relocate, their lives irrevocably altered. An article from the Gainesville Eagle in 1956 detailed the forced relocation of the residents. The language was clinical, detached, displaced populations resettled with government assistance. But a photograph accompanying the article told a different story. A woman, her face etched with despair, stood before her home, its windows already dark and empty. She clutched a child to her chest, their eyes wide with fear. The caption identified her as Mrs. Alara May Greer, one of hundreds forced to leave their ancestral land. Sarah clicked on another article, this one from a local historical society. It spoke of Oscarville, a once thriving African-American community. It prospered after the Civil War, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of its people. But in 1912, a false accusation of assault led to a race riot, and the systematic expulsion of Oscarville's black residents. Some were lynched, others fled, their homes burned to the ground. The land lay vacant for decades, until the government claimed it for the lake. A knot tightened in Sarah's stomach. The lake wasn't just water and trees, it was a burial ground, a repository of sorrow and injustice. The tone of the article shifted as the years passed. The initial enthusiasm faded, replaced by a disquieting undercurrent of concern. Reports of drownings began to surface with alarming frequency. Boaters vanished without a trace, swimmers were pulled under by unseen forces. The lake, once hailed as a symbol of progress, had acquired a sinister reputation. One article, dated July 1959, caught her eye. Local woman drowns on eve of wedding. The photograph showed a young woman with a radiant smile, her hair adorned with flowers. Elara Greer, the article revealed, was days away from marrying her childhood sweetheart when she went for a swim in the lake and never returned. Her body was recovered a week later, tangled in the submerged branches of what was once her family's orchard. The article quoted her fiancé, Thomas Carter, a carpenter by trade. "She loved this lake," he said, his voice thick with grief. "She said it felt like home, but it took her from me." Sarah scrolled through more articles, each one echoing the same tragic refrain: unexplained disappearances, boating accidents, swimmers succumbing to the lake's depths. Some spoke of strange currents, others of sudden drop-offs, but the whispers of something more sinister persisted. Local legends began to circulate, tales of a spectral woman in a white dress, her sorrowful cries echoing across the water. Sightings of ghostly figures lurking beneath the surface, their eyes filled with resentment. The lake, it was said, was haunted by the spirits of those who had been displaced and forgotten. Sarah closed her laptop, the screen reflecting her own troubled expression. The pieces were starting to fit together: the shimmering figure she'd encountered, the mournful resonance, the chilling static. It wasn't just a random anomaly. It was an echo of the past, a manifestation of the grief and anger that permeated the lake. She thought of Elara Greer, the young woman who had drowned on the eve of her wedding, her family, displaced by the lake, her life, cut short by its depths. Was she the source of the spectral presence, or was she just one of many, trapped in the watery abyss, their stories yearning to be heard? The generator sputtered, momentarily plunging the cabin into darkness. Sarah fumbled for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the inky black. The silence felt heavier now, pregnant with the weight of history. The lake was no longer just a body of water, it was a living entity, pulsing with the memories of its past, and Sarah, she realized, had stumbled into its story. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. From somewhere out on the lake, a mournful sound carried on the breeze, a low, resonant hum that sent a shiver down her spine. That sounded like a song, or perhaps a lament, the lament of a lake that refused to forget. A spectral touch. The air grew thick, heavier than the summer humidity warranted. Sarah stood on the shore, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. The spot felt different, charged, a stark contrast to the tranquil surface of the lake. This was where Elara Greer, according to the old newspaper clippings, had last been seen alive. A shimmer in her peripheral vision made her gasp. The figure was back, more distinct this time. And no longer just an outline of light, but a young woman, her spectral form radiating a soft, sorrowful glow. Her eyes, wide and pleading, locked onto Sarah's. Sarah's breath hitched, fear warred with a strange sense of empathy. She wanted to run, to scream, but her feet were rooted to the spot. The figure glided closer, its movements fluid and silent, like smoke in a breeze. The closer it came, the more Sarah could discern the details: the delicate lace of her wedding gown, now tattered and waterlogged, the long, dark hair plastered against her face, the faint, almost imperceptible tremble of her lips. Then, it reached out. A jolt, like 1,000 volts of electricity, coursed through Sarah as the spectral hand brushed against her arm. It wasn't the cold she expected, but something deeper, a chilling resonance that vibrated through her very bones. The world dissolved. She wasn't on the shore anymore, she was Elara. The vibrant colors of the day assaulted her senses. The sun was high, casting a golden glow on the rolling hills surrounding the future Lake Lanier. She felt the soft silk of her wedding gown against her skin, the nervous flutter in her stomach. Laughter echoed around her as she walked hand in hand with a man, his face obscured by the blinding light. He was tall, imposing, his grip on her hand tight, almost possessive. The scene shifted abruptly. Now, twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and orange. She was arguing with the man, her voice rising in desperation. "It's mine, Thomas, father left it to me." The man, Thomas, his features now sharp and cruel, sneered. "Your father was a fool. He should have known better than to leave everything to a woman." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. The pain was real, sharp, and terrifying. She struggled, pulling away, but he was too strong that he dragged her towards the water's edge, his eyes burning with a cold, calculating rage. "No, Thomas, please," she screamed, her voice lost in the gathering darkness. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. With a final, brutal shove, he sent her sprawling into the cold, dark water. The icy shock stole her breath. She flailed, desperately trying to stay afloat, her heavy gown dragging her down. She saw Thomas standing on the shore, his silhouette a dark blot against the fading light that he watched her struggle, his face devoid of emotion. Panic seized her. She gasped, swallowing water. The burning sensation filling her lungs, the weight of the dress was relentless, pulling her deeper. Deeper into the black abyss. The last thing she saw was Thomas's triumphant sneer before the darkness closed in completely. The vision shattered. Sarah stumbled back, gasping for air, her heart pounding against her ribs. The spectral figure was gone, leaving only the lingering chill in the air and the raw, visceral memory of Alara's final moments. She sank to her knees, the sand cold beneath her. The vision had been so real, so intense, she could still feel the icy water filling her lungs. The crushing weight of the dress. That it wasn't an accident. Alara hadn't simply drowned, she had been murdered. And Thomas, the name resonated with a chilling familiarity. The historical society had mentioned a prominent local family, the Montgomerys, instrumental in the lake's creation. Thomas Montgomery. Could it be? A wave of nausea washed over her. The implications were staggering. That a stolen inheritance, a brutal murder, and a conspiracy buried beneath the rising waters of Lake Lanier. The official story, the accepted narrative of a tragic accident, was a lie. She had come to Lake Lanier searching for answers, armed with scientific instruments and a healthy dose of skepticism. Now, she had stumbled upon a truth far more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. The lake wasn't just haunted by grief, it was haunted by injustice, by a secret that someone, somewhere, was still desperately trying to keep hidden. Sarah rose to her feet, her legs shaky but her resolve hardening. She knew what she had to do. She had to uncover the truth, to expose the darkness that lay beneath the surface of Lake Lanier, to give Alara Greer the justice she had been denied for so long. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was walking into something far more dangerous than she could possibly comprehend. The orb's plea. The residue of Alara's agony clung to Sarah, a silent scream reverberating through her skull. She recoiled from the water's edge, a glacial seep invading her marrow despite the sultry Georgia air. What had been distant glimmers now converged, spiraling inward, their luminosity escalating into an almost intolerable blaze that transcended mere light. It felt like unadulterated anguish, a concentrated sorrow that threatened to engulf her. She dug her fingers into her temples, fighting to quell the encroaching sensation. "What is all this?" she breathed, her voice lost to the soft susurrus of waves. Then, a voice, not heard, but known, resonated within her core. It was Alara, yet, diminished, fragmented, but sharpened with an insistence that tore at Sarah's soul. *Aidus*. The articulation defied any language Sarah knew, yet the meaning pierced through with utter clarity. A supplication, a frantic cry from the abyss. She grasped, with a dreadful certainty, that the orbs weren't random energy. They were shards of souls, echoes of lives claimed by the lake, powered by accumulated grief and simmering rage. A spectral choir of the drowned, with Alara as their mouthpiece. He stole everything. My essence, my identity, my narrative. The voice fractured, a surge of desolation washing over Sarah. They all did. The implication struck her with brutal force that it wasn't solely Thomas Montgomery. Accomplices existed. A clandestine web, woven deep beneath the lake's dark skin and the relentless march of years. The Montgomery lineage, built upon a foundation of pilfered land and stifled cries. Sarah's scientific detachment, already reeling from recent experiences, finally shattered. This wasn't about anomalies or unexplained phenomena. She was confronting the repercussions of a profound injustice, a festering wound marring Lake Lanier's serene facade. She advanced a hesitant step, extending a hand towards the swirling lights. I witnessed what transpired, she declared, her voice trembling. I saw Thomas. I saw him murder you. A spark, hope, perhaps, flickered amidst the orbs. Asterisk reveal it, compel them to listen that he must answer, they all must, asterisk. The burden of that charge descended upon Sarah, a crushing weight. Unearthing the truth wouldn't be simple. The Montgomerys wielded power, their influence woven into the community's very fabric. She was an outsider, a scientist with a hypothesis, armed only with a spectral recollection and a burgeoning sense of moral indignation. Doubt wormed its way in. Could she truly confront such a formidable adversary? What if she erred? What if she misinterpreted the vision, or succumbed to some elaborate illusion? But then Alara's face re-emerged, the stark terror etched upon it, the desperation ringing in her unspoken plea. She conjured the other forsaken souls, imprisoned within the lake, their stories unheard, their suffering unseen. She remembered the Greer family, their heritage and land erased by the lake's creation. She recognized the injustice, stark and undeniable, and resolve solidified within her. She would proceed. She must. I shall, she affirmed, her voice strengthening, conviction eclipsing fear. I will reveal what transpired here, that I swear it. As she spoke, the orbs surged one final time, bathing the vicinity in an unearthly radiance before gradually dispersing, dissolving into the gloom. The telepathic voice receded, leaving only the echo of its entreaty. Sarah stood alone on the bank, the silence punctuated only by the chorus of crickets in the adjacent woods. The air felt lighter, purged of a palpable oppression, but the quiet was a mirage. The lake remained, its depths guarding secrets that clamored to be disinterred. She pivoted and retraced her steps towards her vehicle, her thoughts churning. Where did one even begin? Who would credit her? She required proof, palpable evidence to support her assertions. The vision possessed power, yet it wouldn't hold up in a court, or even sway the local authorities. She glanced back at the lake, a tremor racing down her spine. She comprehended, with bone-chilling certainty, that she wasn't merely probing a mystery any longer. She was entering a conflict, a battle against formidable forces that would spare nothing to safeguard their secrets, and she was now the champion of voices silenced for eons. Science versus specter. The orbs throbbed, their unearthly luminescence sharpening from mere oddities on the horizon into concentrated bolts of unnerving energy zeroing in on Sarah's small vessel. An unseen pressure vibrated the air, prickling her skin. The gentle slap of water against the hull, once a comforting rhythm, now echoed like a frantic tattoo against the growing symphony of dread. Her intellect demanded a scientific explanation, a rational foothold in this spiraling enigma. Electromagnetic resonance, she murmured, seeking solace in the familiar. Elevated telluric currents interacting with unknown aquatic elements. Yet the words rang false, even to her own ears. These were not mere emissions of light, they projected intention, a palpable sense of being dissected, analyzed, laid bare. The engine choked, sputtered, and died. The ensuing quiet was a heavy blanket, punctuated only by the boat's listless rocking. Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel, her knuckles bone white. All right, science, evaluate, respond, contain the panic. She snatched her multimeter, its cold metal a welcome grounding, attaching the probes to the battery. She saw the voltage barely registered, a ghostly flicker. She traced the cables, her fingers clumsy in the half-light within the cabin. A strange warmth emanated from the wires, a subtle thrum. Outside, the orbs rearranged themselves, compressing into a tighter cluster. The feeling of observation intensified, sharpening into a demanding, almost predatory focus. Sarah flicked on her headlamp, flooding the engine compartment with light. The acrid tang of ozone filled her nostrils. She scrutinized the distributor, the plugs, the alternator. Nothing visually amiss, yet the multimeter gave only manic readings, spiking and plummeting erratically. Something was actively sabotaging the flow of power. Then understanding dawned. The orbs weren't just emitting energy, they were the problem. Their emanations were disrupting the boat's core systems, overloading and collapsing them. Damn, she spat, frustration boiling over. This wasn't some ethereal phenomenon, but a tangible, quantifiable force directed against her. She fumbled for her Faraday cage materials, a coil of copper mesh, aluminum foil, and tape, brought to protect sensitive instruments from electromagnetic interference. Now it would face off against ghosts. Time to try grounding this out, she muttered, tearing off a section of the copper weave. Her hands shook as she covered the engine block, carefully layering the mesh and foil, fashioning a crude EMP barrier. A long shot, a desperate attempt to impose order on chaos, but her only play. The orbs outside seemed to react to her efforts, their effulgence stuttering wildly. A deep hum vibrated through the air, resonating deep within her bones. The boat lurched violently, throwing her against the engine. Mount. A searing pain bloomed on her lip. She tasted blood. Ignoring the throbbing, she pressed on, her focus razor-edged. She taped the final layer of foil, creating a makeshift bulwark. Sweat blurred her vision, her breath hitched in her chest. Done. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the ignition. Failure loomed as a distinct possibility. What if they simply intensified their assault? The vision chilled her. But she couldn't remain, adrift and vulnerable, a target for whatever malign power stalked. The lake, drawing a steadying breath, she twisted the key. The engine cranked, coughed, then roared to life. Relief surged through her, so intense it nearly buckled her knees. It idled roughly, but it lived. She glanced at the orbs, still there, looming, but their intensity lessened, their light less defined. Had the shield been effective, or merely bought her a reprieve? She didn't linger to find out. Shifting into gear, she pointed the boat toward the shore, her gaze locked on the distant glow of the marina. The orbs trailed her for a time, their radiance a spectral reminder of the forces arrayed against her, before finally dissolving into the inky blackness. Back on land, Sarah didn't stop. She hauled the boat from the water, trusting nothing to remain untouched. She needed to decipher the enigma. This was not just electromagnetic fields or atmospheric disturbances. This was something else, far more intricate, far more sinister, connected to Lanier's history, to the submerged town, to Alara Greer, and to the Montgomery legacy. In her motel room, she fired up her laptop, the screen's glow illuminating her weary features. Science had offered a lifeline, but the reality was undeniable. Science alone would not prevail. She had to excavate the past, unearth the reasons for the hauntings, and grasp the forces churning beneath Lake Lanier's placid surface. The clash between logic and the spectral realm had only just begun. A glimmer of hope. The engine choked, a feeble, grinding cough almost swallowed by the drone assaulting Sarah's ears. A second, more robust flare followed, then a fitful tremor shuddered through the boat's frame. The improvised Faraday cage, a chaotic rat's nest of foil and mesh clinging precariously to the engine housing, was, against all odds, functioning, imperfectly. The orbs outside still glowed with oppressive intent, a silent, throbbing pressure against the makeshift shield, but sufficiently enough to offer a slim chance. Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel, her knuckles bone white. She urged the motor onward, muttering fervent appeals. Just a little further, baby, get me back. The engine responded with a sharp jolt, then another, and finally, with a resounding bellow that cleaved the night, roaring back to life. The boat surged ahead, knifing through the water, the fluctuating field visibly warping the energy emanating from the closest spheres. A brief respite, she knew, yet each gained meter felt like a hard-won battle. Casting a hasty glance back, she noted the orbs, their presence still menacing, were gradually losing ground. Then, a frigid sensation, sharper than the night's chill, lanced through her. A figure shimmered into existence beside her, translucent and sorrowful, her eyes, pools of ancient grief, locked on Sarah, not Alara. This was an elder spirit, her spectral presence radiating a quiet grace, even in the face of oblivion. You shouldn't linger here, the apparition breathed, her voice a dry whisper like wind through withered leaves. You've roused slumbering things best left undisturbed. Sarah, no longer easily rattled, maintained her focus on the dark expanse ahead. I know about the drowned, Elara Greer, the history they tried to bury beneath the waves. The lake holds every memory, the figure murmured, her gaze lost in the depths. But the Montgomerys, that they are merely a facet, there are others woven into this tapestry, powerful people who have long profited from the lake's shadow. Sarah's brow furrowed. Others, how so? The spirit drifted closer, her voice nearly imperceptible over the engine's thrum. This lake, it nourishes something. An entity older than the Montgomerys, insatiably hungry, they manage the access, manipulate the occurrences, but they serve a far grander design, one they may only partially grasp. Before Sarah could push for details, the figure began to wane, her form dissolving into the rising mist. "Tread carefully, child," she whispered, her voice receding. "The truth is a treacherous burden to bear on this accursed lake." And then she vanished, leaving Sarah alone once more, burdened by the weight of her cryptic warning. The shoreline became visible, the marina lights gleaming like beacons in the encroaching darkness. She pushed the beleaguered engine, ignoring the protesting strains and the ominous resonance of the trailing orbs. The Faraday cage was weakening, she could sense it, the protective barrier fraying under the persistent assault. As the hull grated against the dock, Sarah killed the engine and leapt ashore, abandoning the vessel to its fate. She needed distance, time to dissect the events, to absorb the revelations. But first, a message needed sending. Inside the marina office, she bolted the door and seized the marine radio, the cold metal a grounding comfort against her trembling hands. She cycled through the channels, settling on the designated emergency band. "Mayday, mayday, mayday," she announced, her voice firm despite the chaos churning within. "This is research vessel Nightingale. I am reporting an anomaly on Lake Lanier, possible energy fluctuations causing equipment failure." She paused, carefully calibrating her words. She couldn't expose everything, not yet, not without corroboration, without a better understanding. "I suspect these fluctuations are linked to past incidents and potential ecological threats, requesting immediate inspection by qualified personnel." Over. Static crackled in reply. "Nightingale, this is Coast Guard Station Atlanta. We copy your distress transmission. Please advise your present location and a more precise description of the ecological threats." Sarah hesitated. "Location is Lake Lanier, exact coordinates to follow. The threat is multifaceted. I will provide a comprehensive report upon arrival. I suspect there are unacknowledged factors contributing to the lake's volatility." Over. "Understood, Nightingale. Proceed to the closest Coast Guard facility. We are deploying a unit to your coordinates." Over. "Affirmative," Sarah responded, deactivating the radio. It was a gamble. The Montgomerys, or their puppet masters, undoubtedly wielded influence over local authorities, but it was a beginning. A spark of hope in the pervasive darkness consuming Lake Lanier. She had planted the seed. Now, she needed to nurture its growth. Echoes on the shore. The motor sputtered its dying protest as Sarah coaxed the boat toward the shore, its jury-rigged Faraday cage clattering like bones in a sack. Back on terra firma, the chorus of the land, cicadas trilling, a distant engine's thrum, soothed her jangled nerves. She winched the boat onto its trailer, the metallic shriek slicing through the tranquil night. Her thoughts churned like troubled waters, the luminous orbs, the mechanical failure, the warning imparted by that entity residing in the lake's depths, and Elara Greer's name, echoing in the chambers of her mind. An ancient being, the Montgomery lineage, a decade-spanning conspiracy. It was a Gordian knot, and Sarah intended to sever it. First, tangible facts were needed, concrete, verifiable truths, not ethereal pronouncements. Driven by surging adrenaline and a craving for caffeine, she headed straight to a nearby all-night cafe. Hunching over her laptop, she began to excavate. Elara Greer, she entered into the search bar, supplementing it with Lake Lanier, and every imaginable synonym for drowning, accident, and disappearance. The initial returns were meager, fleeting mentions in local historical societies, hushed accounts of a tragic mishap, yet devoid of substance. It was as though history had been meticulously sanitized. Impatience pricked at her. She required more than online whispers. She needed to tread the ground. The following morning, clutching a tepid thermos of coffee, Sarah steered toward the modest Gainesville library. The librarian, a kindly woman with a towering silver updo, scrutinized Sarah with mingled inquisitiveness and suspicion. "May I help you find something specific, dear?" she inquired, adjusting her glasses. "I'm researching local history, particularly incidents involving disappearances or fatalities around Lake Lanier," Sarah answered, striving for casualness. "Specifically from the early to mid-20th century." The librarian's scrutiny intensified marginally. "Lake Lanier has seen its share of misfortune," she conceded, her tone gentler. "But the records are, well, just that, death notices, law enforcement reports, such details." "Precisely what I'm after," Sarah asserted, forcing a smile. The librarian guided her to a musty alcove, lined with imposing shelves filled with bound periodicals and ancestral records. "Begin with the Gainesville Times archives," she suggested. "We've digitally archived almost everything up to 1960. Beyond that, you'll need to use microfilm, and, of course," she added, her voice dropping, "there's Eli Walker. No one alive knows more about that lake. That he lives near the old Vance estate." Eli Walker, the name sparked a dim recollection that it had surfaced in one of the forum threads she'd scanned the previous night. A local oracle, a man claiming intimate knowledge of the lake's secrets. Sarah expressed her gratitude to the librarian and plunged into the archives. Hours evaporated as she navigated endless digital pages, her eyes stinging with fatigue. She combed for any reference to Alara Greer, the Vance family, or anomalous deaths or mishaps. At long last, she unearthed something. A brief, almost concealed article from 1958, "Local woman perishes in boating accident." The piece was succinct, skirting around specifics. Alara Greer, age 22, daughter of prominent local businessman, John Greer, drowned in Lake Lanier after her boat overturned. No living soul witnessed the event. The article noted a cursory inquiry but concluded that the demise was accidental. The accompanying photograph was blurred, but Sarah discerned a youthful woman with ebony locks and haunted eyes. The same gaze she'd witnessed in the water, yet something about the article felt amiss. The phrasing seemed contrived, the details evasive. As if someone had purposefully attempted to downplay the story's significance. Sarah copied and printed the piece. She had a name, a date, a likeness. It wasn't much, but it was a foundation. That afternoon, Sarah found herself driving along a sinuous dirt path, of the type that seemed to vanish into the verdant embrace of the Georgia woods. She was looking for Eli Walker. The librarian's directions had been vague, yet sufficient to direct her near the vicinity of the erstwhile Vance property. Eventually, she spotted it, a diminutive, weather-beaten cottage nestled amongst the towering trees, smoke spiraling lazily from its chimney. A man occupied the porch, crafting something from a piece of timber. He was advanced in years, his visage deeply lined, his eyes as fathomless and still as the lake itself. This had to be Eli Walker. She brought her car to a stop and approached warily. "Mr. Walker," she called out. The old man glanced up, his gaze unwavering. "That's what they call me," he replied, his voice gravelly. "Lost, are you?" "I'm seeking information pertaining to Lake Lanier," Sarah explained. "Its history. I've heard you possess considerable knowledge of it." Eli Walker chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "The lake has a lengthy memory," he observed. "And I've lingered long enough to overhear some of its chronicles." He motioned toward a rocking chair on the porch. "Take a seat, tell me what you're after." Sarah sat, the wood groaning softly beneath her. She produced the newspaper clipping. "Have you ever heard of Alara Greer?" she questioned, extending it toward him. Eli Walker accepted the article, his gaze sweeping across the time-worn text. A prolonged silence hung between them, then, he gave a deliberate nod. "Elara," he uttered, his voice barely audible. "She married into the Vance family. A kind spirit, taken too soon." He regarded Sarah, his eyes brimming with a sorrow that felt as ancient as the lake's waters. "What brings you to Elara Greer?" "The Vance legacy." The biting air in the Forsyth County Historical Society archives went beyond old brick and droning dehumidifiers. A profound coldness, a thing of bone-deep penetration and hushed, ancient secrets, clung to Sarah as she examined the faded microfiche of the 1950s. Elara Greer's official drowning report was insubstantial, a curt summary dismissing the tragedy as a simple accident, the fault of forceful currents and youthful recklessness. Yet, it felt wrong. The coroner's assessment was perfunctory. Skimming over crucial details, the listed witnesses offered accounts so uniform, they read as if scripted. Then, of course, there were the Vances. Their name, a constant echo in these halls, was tied to property records, charitable endowments, and whispers of entrenched wealth. Eleanor Vance, even through the grainy lens of time, her poise shone, a string of pearls gracing a shadowed gown, her face an impassive mask. Newspaper clippings lauded her societal contributions, her devotion to local charities. A cornerstone of the community, Sarah cross-referenced the drowning with property ledgers. The Vance family controlled a considerable stretch of the lake's shoreline, a heritage passed down through generations. A subtle anomaly piqued her interest, a disputed lot, a seemingly negligible sliver of land jutting into the water, linked to this parcel. Elara Greer, spurred by a sudden, gut-level certainty, Sarah requested access to the Vance family's private records. After some negotiation with the initially hesitant archivist, swayed perhaps by Sarah's tenacity and a touch of intimidation from her credentials, limited access was granted. The document boxes felt weighty, filled with legal briefs, intimate letters, and ledgers that charted the rise of a dynasty tethered to Lake Lanier. Hours evaporated under the fluorescent hum, Sarah meticulously dissecting each relic. Most were trivial: invoices for garden upkeep, missives from distant relations, bank statements showing mundane transactions. Then, secreted within a time-worn, leather-bound journal, she unearthed it, a handwritten memo, inscribed in elegant script on stationery embossed with the Vance family crest. "The Greer situation needs resolution with utmost discretion. Her claim imperils everything. A settlement is ill-advised. The estate is too substantial to jeopardize." The document lacked a signature, but the handwriting mirrored samples of Eleanor Vance's signature that Sarah had unearthed elsewhere. The date, weeks before Elara Greer's demise. Sarah caught her breath. Claim. Estate. The note implied a calculated act, a silencing of Elara Greer, but what claim, what fortune? She plunged deeper into the land indexes, comparing them to the Vance financial records. Elara Greer's property was strategically positioned, controlling access to a larger tract, one revealed by geological surveys, also housed in the Vance trove, to be rich in valuable minerals. Resources the Vance family had been quietly extracting for years. Elara Greer, it seemed, had been the impediment, the puzzle. Resolved itself, Elara was not a victim of chance. She was a challenge to the Vance family's affluence and sway, and Eleanor Vance, the respected matriarch, had orchestrated her end. A wave of sickness rolled over Sarah. She imagined the lake, its depths concealing more than bodies, secrets guarded by a family who would stop at nothing to preserve their legacy. The archive's cold intensified, a tangible manifestation of long-simmering injustice. Closing the ledger, Sarah experienced an internal shift. Her skepticism, though unbroken, was giving way to a rising indignation. This was more than a local legend. This was a chronicle of avarice, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder. The Vances, buoyed by their money and influence, had kept the truth submerged for far too long. She pictured Eleanor Vance, still vibrant, still cloaked in her respectable veneer. Unmasking her would be fraught with peril. Of that, Sarah was sure. The Vances held deep roots in the community, their tendrils of influence reaching into every corner of Forsyth County, but she couldn't ignore what she'd unearthed. The lake clamored for justice, and Sarah resolved to provide it, regardless of the personal toll. As she gathered her notes, the insistent drone of the dehumidifiers grew, transforming into a somber, mournful sound. She felt a presence, a chill that permeated more than just the antiquated building, a sensation of something unseen, something watching, and in that instant, Sarah knew she wasn't just excavating the past, she was stepping into a battle. The Vance dynasty was a fortress forged from deceit and destruction, and she was about to dismantle it, brick by brick, confrontation and revelation. The Vance estate's iron gates, black lacework against the bright day, presented a formidable barrier. Sarah tightened her grip on her satchel, the manila envelope, a weighty promise of exposure, digging into her ribs. She drew in the humid Georgia air, redolent with pine and the impending storm's ozone tang, and jabbed the intercom. A tinny voice rasped, "Identify yourself." "Sarah Chen, that I have an appointment with Mrs. Vance." The silence stretched, punctuated only by static, then, a mechanical snick, and the gates swung inward, revealing a serpentine drive leading to a mansion consumed by ivy. A stone behemoth seemingly sprouted from the very earth. Eleanor Vance greeted Sarah in a foyer that echoed with lineage and hushed secrets. The air, thick with lilies, couldn't quite mask an undercurrent of something bitter, something vaguely repellent. Despite her years, Eleanor projected power. Her silver coif was immaculate. Her blue eyes laser-sharp. She offered a hand, her grasp surprisingly firm. "Ms. Chen, thank you for obliging my curiosity. Your insistence intrigued me." Her voice, a modulated murmur, held a calculated cadence. "I believe what I've brought will clarify matters," Sarah replied, fighting the urge to squirm under that unnerving gaze. She followed Eleanor into a dimly lit study, walled with leather-bound volumes. A vast mahogany desk, gleaming like obsidian, anchored the room. Eleanor settled into the throne-like chair behind the desk, gesturing toward one of the velvet armchairs. "Please, be seated." Sarah opened the envelope. Land records, discrepancies in Alara Greer's death certificate, intercepted correspondence hinting at Eleanor's machinations. She laid them out like cards on a table. Eleanor watched, her face a blank canvas. "These documents," Sarah began, her voice unwavering despite the tremor in her fingers, imply that Alara Greer didn't simply drown, that her demise was engineered to solidify the Vance family's land holdings. Eleanor's eyes narrowed imperceptibly, but she remained mute, her focus glued to the incriminating papers. The only sound was the measured tick of a grandfather clock, a rhythmic drumbeat in the suffocating quiet. Finally, she spoke, her tone silk over steel. "These are artifice, counterfeits. Anyone can fabricate evidence to support any narrative." She leaned forward, those blue eyes glittering like glacial ice. "Are you accusing my family of murder, Ms. Chen? Do you appreciate the magnitude of such a claim?" "I'm presenting evidence, Mrs. Vance, evidence demonstrating clear motive and a meticulously constructed concealment." Sarah held her gaze, refusing to be cowed. Alara Greer impeded the Vance family's ambitions. She was eliminated. Eleanor pushed back from her chair, her movements betraying a surprising vitality. She crossed to the window, presenting her back, and gazed out at the lake, a silver shimmer in the distance. "This land," she murmured, her voice tinged with both pride and rue, "has always been demanding that it consumes, and sometimes sacrifices are demanded." She turned back, her face a landscape of hard-won battles. "You cannot fathom what it demands to forge an empire, Ms. Chen." The bargain struck, the choices that claw at your conscience. My family, we acted to ensure survival. To prosper. She paused, her gaze again drifting to the lake. Alara, she was an impediment. A loose thread that unraveled everything we'd constructed. It was regrettable. The word hung, heavy with calculated indifference, not a confession, precisely, but dangerously close. An acknowledgement of the darkness underpinning the Vance legacy. "You presume to judge us," armed with your contemporary moralities?" Eleanor pressed, a flicker of desperation in her tone. "You're oblivious to the pressures, the burdens that we were safeguarding our future. At the expense of a life." Sarah countered, disbelief lacing her voice that Eleanor's eyes turned to granite. "The world is inherently unfair, ms.chen.it always has been, and sometimes, to prevail, one must fight without honor." She returned to her desk, her gaze locked on Sarah. "Leave these fabrications, and depart this house. Erase what you imagine you comprehend, for your own preservation." Sarah recognized the threat, veiled yet unmistakable. She gathered the remaining documents, her hands betraying her inner turmoil. "I cannot comply, Mrs. Vance. Too many lives bear the scars of what transpired here. The truth must surface." Eleanor observed her, her expression a mask of chilling calculation. "Then you have acquired a perilous adversary, Ms. Chen. Justice for the drowned." "I know this sounds insane," Sarah said, placing the meticulously organized file on Detective Hayes' desk. The fluorescent lights of the precinct glinted off the clear plastic protectors, highlighting the grim photographs and transcripts within. "But Alara Greer didn't just drown, she was murdered." Hayes leaned back in his chair, his face a mask of weary skepticism. He'd seen enough conspiracy theories to last a lifetime, especially around Lake Lanier. "Dr. Chen, with all due respect, we investigated the Greer case thoroughly. It was ruled an accidental drowning. Tragic, yes, but accidental." He reached for his coffee, the ceramic mug emblazoned with the Atlanta Braves logo. "I understand your hesitation," Sarah countered, her voice calm but firm. "But I have evidence, land deeds, witness testimonies, and a confession, albeit a veiled one, from Eleanor Vance herself." She tapped the file. "It all points to a deliberate act, orchestrated to acquire Alara's land for the development of the Vance family's resort." Hayes sighed, setting his mug down with a soft thud. "Eleanor Vance, the Vance family has more money than God, Dr. Chen. Why would they risk everything for a small plot of land?" "Because it wasn't just about the land," Sarah explained. "It was about control. Alara Greer was a holdout, refusing to sell. Her presence jeopardized the entire project, and her death conveniently removed that obstacle." She flipped open the file to a highlighted section of Alara's original land grant, a document that proved its strategic importance for lake access. Hayes finally picked up the file, his eyes scanning the documents. He paused at the photographs, crime scene photos of Alara's body, pulled from the archives. Then he read the transcript of Sarah's conversation with Eleanor Vance, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. "This impediment comment, it's circumstantial," he said, but the skepticism in his voice was waning. "Circumstantial, perhaps, but coupled with the other evidence, it paints a clear picture," Sarah pressed. "The timing of her death, the Vance family's subsequent acquisition of the land, the fact that other landowners who refused to sell also experienced accidents. It's a pattern, detective. A pattern of intimidation and violence." Hayes ran a hand over his stubbled chin. "Other landowners? What other landowners?" Sarah presented him with affidavits from 2 elderly residents, now living in assisted living facilities, who claimed they were threatened and harassed by Vance family representatives to sell their land decades ago. One spoke of a fishing accident that nearly claimed his life after he refused to sign the papers. Hayes leaned back, the weight of the information settling upon him. He looked at Sarah, his eyes now filled with a grim determination. "All right, Dr. Chen. Let's reopen this case." The wheels of justice, though slow, began to turn. Hayes, a methodical and relentless investigator, assigned a team to corroborate Sarah's evidence. Witnesses were re-interviewed, land records were scrutinized, and financial transactions were traced. The investigation stretched for weeks, the tension in the precinct palpable. The break came when a former employee of the Vance family, racked with guilt after years of silence, came forward with damning testimony. He revealed that he was paid to Sabotage Alara Greer's boat, making it appear as though she had simply drowned after a tragic accident. With the new evidence in hand, Hayes moved swiftly. Eleanor Vance and two of her accomplices, including her right-hand man and a former boat mechanic, were arrested and charged with conspiracy and murder. The arrest of Eleanor Vance sent shockwaves through the community. The Vance family, long considered untouchable, was finally being held accountable for their actions. News crews descended on Lake Lanier, their cameras capturing the sprawling Vance estate and the faces of stunned residents. Sarah watched the news coverage from her small cabin, a sense of weary satisfaction washing over her. It wasn't a victory, not entirely. Alara Greer was still gone, and the scars of the past would forever remain etched into the landscape of Lake Lanier. But it was a start. It was justice, however delayed, for the drowned. The courtroom drama was intense. Eleanor Vance, regal and defiant, maintained her innocence, portraying herself as a victim of a vengeful scientist in a biased legal system. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for days, ultimately finding her and her accomplices guilty on all counts. As the verdict was read, Sarah felt a tremor run through her, not of fear, but of something else, something akin to release. The spirits of the lake, she believed, could finally rest a little easier, knowing that their stories had been heard, their deaths avenged. The fight for justice was far from over, but for now, a measure of peace had been restored to the haunted waters of Lake Lanier. Lanier's peace. Morning light, strained through the veil of mist still kissing Lake Lanier, splashed the water with a fractured tapestry of gold and pewter. Sarah Chen pushed her sunglasses higher, the familiar throb in her trapezius muscles a constant reminder of years spent poring over research and diving gear. 3 years had passed since the Vance trials closed. Eleanor Vance and her cohorts were now inmates, their painstakingly constructed edifice of lies in ruins. But the lake endured. She wasn't here to hunt phantoms today, not literally. The shimmering orbs, the incandescent beacons of trapped souls, had faded in the months after the verdict. Perhaps justice, however delayed and imperfect, had finally granted them solace. Her focus had shifted to the lake's enduring ecological wounds, the quiet, creeping consequences of its creation, the relentless chemical bleed from shoreline development, the delicate ecological ballet forever disrupted. Yet, even in this scientific pursuit, the past resonated. Submerged house foundations, skeletal roadbeds, unsettling contortions of the terrain, each a muted testament to displacement, to lives abruptly curtailed. A sense of obligation tugged at her. She needed to comprehend not only the science, but the essence of this place. She steered her small research vessel towards the tranquil northern reaches of the lake, the low thrum of the motor a bass note against the soprano of birdsong. Her destination, Eli Walker's. The planks of Eli's dock offered a time-worn creak of welcome as she drew near. He sat on his porch, shaping a piece of wood with slow, sure movements. Time had deepened the etchings on his face, but his eyes still held that spark of shrewd, knowing light. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice a low rasp, yet infused with warmth. He laid aside the wood and rose, offering a calloused hand. His grip, surprisingly firm, belied his age. "Didn't figure you'd be back so soon. Thought you'd be off chasing down grants and crafting eloquent reports." Sarah smiled. "The reports are inching along, slowly but surely, but I wanted to check in, see how you're holding up." Eli chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "Faring all right. For a relic, the lake's been hushed these last few years, serene, almost like it's finally drawing breath." He gestured toward a pair of weathered rocking chairs. "Sit a spell. I'll fetch us some sweet tea." As they settled, mugs warming their hands, Eli gazed out at the still waters. "You did right by this place, Sarah. True good. Them folks, they'd been clenching onto bitterness for an age, ensnared, always sensed it, you know, a shadow clinging to the water." "I'm grateful I could help," Sarah murmured. "But it wasn't just me, Detective Hayes, the families who found their voice. It demanded immeasurable courage." Eli nodded slowly, his gaze contemplative. "Courage is a curious thing. sometimes it's cloaked in unexpected disguises, and sometimes, it takes an outsider's eye to see what's been before us all this time. He paused, his gaze piercing and direct. You grasp the lake now, don't you? Something beyond the facts and figures. Sarah met his gaze, a deepening comprehension taking root within her. I'm beginning to, she conceded. It's more than just water and earth. It's memory etched in the land. It's irretrievable loss. A saga clamoring to be heard. Eli's smile was genuine, a deep-seated warmth that crinkled the corners of his eyes. That's the truth, and maybe, just maybe, that saga can at last begin to mend. He indicated a cluster of lilies flowering near the bank. Even the lilies are flaunting brighter colors this year. Before, they always looked blanched, like they were in mourning. A comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the gentle slap of water against the dock and the distant cry of a red-tailed hawk. Sarah's thoughts drifted to the orbs, the bone-chilling cold she'd known, the fleeting glimpses of faces in the depths. She'd arrived a skeptic, armed with instruments and a drive to debunk the legends, but the lake had challenged her, confronted her with a reality that resisted easy categorization. She hadn't morphed into a believer in specters, not precisely, yet, she'd learned to honor the potency of the unseen, the enduring reach of trauma, the way the past could leach into the present and stain the very essence of a location. Scientific analysis could measure the water's composition, map the contours of the bed, quantify the impact of erosion, but it couldn't fully capture the human toll, the burden of story submerged. As she prepared to depart, Eli stood and placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch unexpectedly tender. Thank you, Sarah, he said, his voice thick with emotion, for lending an ear to the lake, for giving them souls a voice. Back on the water, Sarah steered the vessel toward the setting sun, the firmament a riot of incandescent shades. The lake lay placid, its surface a perfect mirror reflecting the spectacle above. She peered at the water, half expecting a fleeting glimpse, a momentary shimmer, a sign of acknowledgement, but there was only the serene expanse, the whispering breeze, and the lingering sensation of tranquility. She remained uncertain if the orbs were truly gone, if the spirits had found their final rest, or if the lake was simply lying dormant, gathering secrets for another turn. But she knew this: she would remain vigilant, she would persist in her research, she would bear witness to the narratives of Lake Lanier, both known and obscure. For as long as life allowed, the lake, she acknowledged, had become a part of her, inseparable from her soul, and she, reciprocally, was a part of it. Lanier's legacy, she would forever carry.